It's been 30 long years since the monsters first appeared, tearing through the world like nightmares made flesh. But thanks to those who awakened supernatural powers, humanity fought back, and the monsters became nothing more than relics of fear. From that war, a new global phenomenon was born, the Hunter League, an arena where the gifted turned their power into sport. And among them stood our hero, Cole Phillips, a living legend whose name once echoed across every stadium. Yet after a lackluster summer season and a crushing failure to reach the playoffs, his legend began to fade. Years of glory, sweat, and sacrifice, all of it vanished in an instant, buried under the weight of two bad seasons. Enraged by the toxic comments flooding his feed, Cole slammed his phone to the floor. His manager called soon after, coldly saying that this season might be his last. The chairman wanted Cole to step down. There was even talk about his overdue military service. He almost wished they'd just kicked him off outright. He'd be lying if he said he hadn't thought about quitting. Age was creeping up on him, dulling his reflexes, eroding the instincts that once made him unstoppable. Hard to believe they now wanted him as a symbolic team leader when he'd once carried the entire squad on his back. His anger exploded. The table went flying. Cole turned toward the door, done listening to the manager's hollow words. The man snapped, calling him an ungrateful brat who didn't know the meaning of respect. He shouted that this attitude was exactly why Cole's public image had tanked, that raising him had been a waste of effort. The words cut deep. Cole spun back, grabbing the man by the collar. The manager hadn't raised him. He'd just leeched off his success and forgotten who brought him there. If only he hadn't pushed Cole to trigger full bloom back in high school, things might have been different. Gasping for air, the manager stammered that he only did what was best for him. Cole let go, shoving him back into his chair. All of this was his fault anyway. But even violence wouldn't change anything. Cole felt hollow, worthless. Once, his hands had held countless trophies. Now, all that remained were fading memories and dead-end skills. His high-rank perks, his magical weapon transmutation, amazing abilities, but all maxed out. No room to grow. All he had left was an aging body and a skill that had locked itself too early. Full bloom was both his gift and his curse. It had stopped his evolution. What meaning was left in living like this? Cole couldn't find one. Those thoughts became fate. As he crossed the street, all he saw were the blinding headlights of a truck. Then, impact, pain, screams, blood. No, that couldn't be it. He wanted to keep fighting. He wanted to hear the crowd chanting his name again. To feel that electric rush on stage, the heartbeat of 1,000 fans. To stand victorious beside his team one last time with pride blazing in his chest. That was the last thing he remembered from his previous life. Time travel. Everyone's dreamed of it at least once. People always carry regrets. The urge to go back and fix things is human nature. Usually, though, it's nothing but fantasy. But when the scan results were in, the doctor asked them to wait just a moment. He congratulated Cole's mother. Her son was officially awakened. The woman was speechless, while Cole just tugged her sleeve, ready to go home. On the way, his mother warned him not to get any silly ideas about becoming a hunter. He wanted to tell her the truth, that he was from the future, once a legendary hunter himself. But she'd never believe it. So instead, he simply promised he'd prove himself. Her response was a quick smack on the head. She wanted him focused on high school next year, not chasing impossible dreams. Cole smiled. He'd prove her wrong. Time to see what a legendary hunter could do with a second chance. Form is temporary, class is forever. The awakening test used the latest tech to analyze physical potential down to the last detail. But there was one thing it couldn't measure: skills. Usually, awakened individuals could only guess what their powers were and how to use them. But not Cole. He possessed the all-seeing eye, a rare ability that revealed the true essence of any target. Just as expected, the so-called full bloom, the skill that once unlocked his insane potential, had now dropped back down to a miserable rank E. Still, skill levels could be raised. Cole could grind his way up and reclaim every perk he once had. But for now, what mattered most was getting used to his current body and its pitiful limits. The reflection in the mirror looked weak, almost foreign, like staring at the ghost of his former self. Suddenly, he heard his mom yelling from the next room. They'd have to keep an eye on him for a year, she said. His dad argued that their son should live how he wants, to give him a year of freedom, but his mother refused to let him act on his own. She insisted that every year counts at his age, that wasting it chasing some impossible dream would be foolish. Yeah, his mom was dead set against him becoming a hunter. No point arguing. She'd never back down. Then she shouted again, saying a lot could change in a single year. And, well, she wasn't wrong. In 1 year, rookie players could rack up dozens of matches, building experience and evolving their skills with every fight. In Cole's previous life, his full bloom would have ranked up to B tier if only he'd started a year earlier. That single year could have changed everything. Determined, he told his parents he didn't need that much time. 6 months would be enough to prove his point. Later, Cole arrived at a specialized training center, ready to practice, but the door didn't open for him. The receptionist told him minors needed guardian permission to enter. He'd completely forgotten about that detail, probably because in his last life, he'd already been an adult. Going home now would mean losing his only chance to train. Just as frustration hit, someone tapped his shoulder. A cheerful voice greeted him. It was Derek Clark's. In his past life, a close combat prodigy who always landed second or third in the first division rankings. He never took first place, but his skills were constantly compared to the league's top hunters. The guy made it all look effortless. Of course, in this timeline, Cole wasn't supposed to know him, so he played dumb. Derek started chatting, saying he was from a parallel class at school and already known as an awakened. Just to mess with him, Cole replied that he'd never heard of him. Derek just grinned. "It happens," he said, and then asked what Cole was doing here. Cole explained that he wanted to use the training hall but got blocked because of the parental consent rule. Derek told him he was part of the Academy's junior club, which gave him full access. So he'd already joined the club by this point. In exchange, though, he wanted to watch Cole's training session. Nothing in life comes free. Annoying, sure, but Cole figured he had nothing to lose, so he agreed. The receptionist booked the room for both of them, registering Derek, member of the Seoul Junior Club, as his guardian. In the locker room, Derek mentioned he hadn't expected anyone else at school to actually want to become a hunter. He was clearly talking about Cole. Derek said he'd joined the club, but most members were older and fitting in was tough. So, Cole wouldn't have to go through any selection test here. The place was mostly empty anyway. Everyone else was too busy prepping for Hunter League trials. Fine by him. Cole just wanted to test his abilities and run a few drills. Derek offered to help, saying they went to the same school, so why not? Typical Derek, still chasing attention, even in this life. Considering Cole's memories, he was decades older in experience. No way he'd need help from this kid. On the training field, Cole finished calibrating the system to summon a tank-class clone. If this the only catch? This particular opponent was so advanced, stepping out of cover was practically suicide. Derek looked confused, thinking Cole had pressed the wrong button. If he wanted to train, he should have spawned a basic clone. Even in training mode, this setup was way too difficult for someone at Cole's current level. But Cole unsheathed his sword anyway. Training dummies should be tough, after all. Derek tried to tease him but let him talk. How do you break something built to be unbreakable? The answer was simple. You smash it with something even stronger. Of course, Cole couldn't pull that off yet. But that didn't mean he was out of options. He just had to aim for the clone's joints, its structural weak points. The moment he struck, He felt his body respond in perfect sync, the rhythm of a seasoned warrior echoing through his muscles. Then came the all-seeing eye. Weak points glowed before his eyes. Cole struck, swift and clean, dismantling the clone in seconds. He didn't expect it to go that well. Should have recorded it. Derek was stunned. He said that was insane. Thought Cole must have set the clone's defense to minimum. Otherwise, it would have taken a unique weapon just to scratch it. Maybe Derek was twisting reality in his head, trying to make sense of what he'd seen. Still, Cole's movements were razor sharp. If he applied to the academy now, he'd pass easily. Derek figured the guy must have trained in swordsmanship or spear combat. Derek wanted to give it a shot before his team's official training began. Cole didn't bother explaining anything. Experience was the best teacher. Derek swore up and down later that he did everything exactly the same. He'd even set the clone's defense to minimum, yet the target still didn't take a single hit of damage. He figured something must have gone wrong with the settings. That's when an older student walked up and asked if Derek planned on greeting him first. Derek shrugged it off, saying he just wanted to warm up and practice a little. Sean laughed. Who the hell uses a tank-class clone to warm up? He told Derek to stop being an idiot. He couldn't even scratch it on the lowest settings. Meanwhile, Cole was on his way home, lost in thought. The truth hit him hard. He was way too weak. The standard training base only provided basic facilities for rookie hunters. Nothing fancy, nothing that could push him past his limits. Once Derek left, Cole had the chance to face off against holographic monsters modeled after real opponents from the Hunter League. The system's AI sparring mode simulated perfect combat feedback, letting him analyze every move. But after running through the drills, he came to one painful realization. He was still pathetically underpowered. His all-seeing eye was only rank 8. It lacked the punch he needed. Physically, his stats barely outclassed those of an average person. If he wanted real strength, he'd have to forge it himself. At least Full Bloom gave him faster regeneration. Hard work was the only way forward, but time was against him. After hours, only club members could access the facility, and asking his parents for permission every single time he wanted to train wasn't an option. He needed a place to train in secret. As he scrolled through the net looking for options, Derek's name flashed on his phone. Derek asked if he was coming to train, and threw in a dinner offer to sweeten the deal. Cole walked into a quiet little restaurant where Derek waved him over immediately. The guy clearly had cash to burn. He joked that he actually had too much money. Everyone knew it. Becoming a hunter wasn't cheap. Awakening tests and proper gear cost a fortune. But bragging about having too much was pushing it. Same old Derek, still the cocky show-off he'd been in Cole's past life, always craving the spotlight, no matter what world or timeline he was in. Cole doubted this dinner was pure generosity, so he asked what the real reason was. Derek admitted Cole was right. The meal was just an excuse. There was something he wanted to ask. Cole guessed it was about the tank clone. Derek explained that he'd tried copying Cole's settings exactly, but couldn't make it work. He wondered if Cole had tweaked something special. But before they could continue, they both noticed a group walking in. A few guys wearing the same academy uniforms as Derek entered the cafe. It had to be his teammates. They were laughing about how Derek tried to take down a tank clone with a sword, calling it pathetic and hopeless. Sean, among them, mocked him, saying he should have first asked whether his friend could shoot laser beams too. The laughter that followed cut deep. Sean called Derek a total clown. So this was the guy who'd interrupted Cole's practice earlier. No way he'd let that slide. Cole answered loud enough for the whole group to hear. There was nothing wrong with the settings. It was simple if you actually knew what you were doing. At least Derek was trying to learn, unlike the pack of morons claiming it was impossible. That just meant they didn't have what it took to pull it off. Cole asked if the academy really didn't teach that, or if they just bought their way in. Derek begged him to stop talking like that. Sean marched over, planted a foot on Cole's chair, and demanded to know who he thought he was, dissing an academy student like that. He gave Cole 3 seconds to apologize before he let a real awakened break his bones. Classic movie villain lines. Shame. Cole had been looking forward to a free meal. Without hesitation, he stood up and cracked Sean across the face. That's what happens when someone gives him 3 seconds. The whole group froze. No one expected that punch. Cole never wasted the chance to strike first. To Derek, Sean was a senior, but to Cole, he was just some loudmouth stranger, not worth respecting. Furious, Sean swung back, but Cole dodged effortlessly. Sean had said there'd be nothing left of Cole if he landed a hit. Big if. He tried again, but this time he caught another solid fist straight to the face. Sean finally snapped, saying Cole had just signed his own death warrant. The air around him started to warp. He was about to unleash his awakened powers. The all-seeing eye flared to life, warning Cole of incoming danger. A crushing wave of gravity exploded outward from Sean. Good thing Cole's reflexes were on point. He dodged just in time. It was insane. Using that kind of skill in a public place filled with civilians? Total madness. Sean had lost all control, tearing up everything around him like a man possessed. Cole hadn't planned to go all out, but if that's how Sean wanted to play it, then he was about to face a one-way ticket to the afterlife. With the all-seeing eye, Cole could evade every strike, but closing the distance was nearly impossible. Fine then. Cole grabbed a plate off the floor and hurled it straight at Sean's face. The plate froze mid-air, stopped by Sean's gravity field. Sean smirked, mocking him, thinking Cole's trick was pathetic. But while Sean was busy running his mouth, another plate slammed right into his head, splattering soup everywhere. Every awakened skill had a cooldown, a short recovery window before it could be used again. Plates kept flying one after another, pelting Sean like a storm. Panic set in as he realized his power was still recharging. Using a skill recklessly without tracking its cooldown leaves you wide open, and Cole took full advantage of that. When Sean finally came to his senses after the barrage, Cole was nowhere to be seen. Then a shout, "Head!" and a fist rocketed straight into Sean's gut. Cole called out again, same word, same tone. Sean tried to guess where the next strike would land, but this time, as the word left his lips, Cole's fist crashed right into Sean's face. Sean hit the floor, and what followed was a flurry of blows that left him sprawled and broken. When the chaos settled, Cole stood there breathing hard. Sure, he threw the first punch, but Sean had wrecked the place. Sean was the only one down, while Cole didn't even have a scratch. Derek and Sean's crew had already bailed, leaving Cole to figure out how to handle the aftermath. Then came the sirens, police closing in fast. Damn it! No way out now. Cole scratched his own cheek, faking a few cuts and bruises. He splashed water onto Sean's face, trying to wake him up. Then Cole lay on the floor, flipping their position so it looked like Sean had been the attacker. When Sean finally stirred, anger twisted his face. He was ready to swing again. But Derek's panicked shouting caught the cops' attention, pointing them toward the fight. Seeing Cole pinned down, the officer drew his gun and ordered Sean to freeze. It worked. Cole's little act sold perfectly. No consequences for him. Sean wouldn't rat him out anyway. Admitting he got wrecked by a newbie? Not happening. Even if he did, saying he used his skill in public would only dig his own grave deeper. Later, Derek mentioned that Sean got chewed out by his squad and was on the verge of being kicked off the team. Justice served, plain and simple. Derek asked if Cole planned to take a break after all that chaos. But Cole said he couldn't waste time. He'd been adjusting his tank clone setup. Full Bloom granted him awakened talents whenever he achieved something extraordinary. In other words, he'd just unlocked a new skill. With a sharp yell, Cole struck the clone right in the head. A new awakened talent appeared. Name your attacks. By calling out the name of his move or the spot he'd strike, his power would surge. The words didn't even have to match the action. Cole hadn't expected the fight with Sean to count as a special achievement. In his past life, he'd never even heard of this skill, a perfect ability for making people think you're a total weirdo, but lethal all the same. That night over dinner, Cole told his parents he was planning to apply for the survival show for aspiring hunters. He wanted to prove to them what he was really capable of. Hunters. The next generation. A reality show that sought out rookie hunters and matched them with mentors. His mom, she shot back, reminding him how his own business went down in flames because of that same logic. If Cole won, he'd earn a spot at the academy or maybe even join a third division hunter team. Plus, the prize money was huge, and they'd craft him a custom weapon. His mom could only hold her head in disbelief. Cole just grinned and promised he'd give it everything he had. Cole's mom finally gave in, telling him she'd support his decision, but warned him not to come crying if he lost. The show's competition was absolutely brutal. They were hunting for the most promising rookie hunter across the entire nation. Still, even those who didn't take first place could earn serious rewards if they impressed the judges. Either way, only the best of the best would make it through. Cole told himself his parents didn't need to worry. He had this under control. He'd already earned plenty of trophies with his own two hands, and there was no way he'd lose to some random amateurs. Meanwhile, the panel of judges gathered to prepare for the flood of applications that was about to come in. Linda Jones recalled a conversation where someone mentioned that Michael had no intention of joining the panel. Something must have made him change his mind. Even with all his success, Michael felt guilty for not giving back to his homeland. Deep down, he hoped that among these contestants, there was a hidden gem waiting to be discovered. Judge Bill chuckled, saying if such a prodigy existed, they'd already be dominating the pro league. After all, the Academy always kept its eyes peeled for new talent. But that was the thing. The real geniuses were eccentric, unpredictable. With the right mentorship, though, they could become unstoppable. Linda chimed in, saying these kids didn't just need a league, they needed someone to guide them. Some of the judges already had favorites lined up, like Ethan. The show's tagline promised they were searching for the next star who will carry the future of the Hunter League. Cole thought it sounded flashy and all, but the first phase was just a written test. He had to list his stats, affiliations, and background info. Basically, every Academy kid's dream section. In this life, Cole hadn't yet faced many hardships, which made answering the next question tricky. The form asked about difficulties faced within a team. In his previous life, Cole used to make his teammates follow his every command. Not exactly a shining example of teamwork. He'd thought this contest would be easy, but now it felt like a setup. If there was a practical test later, he could make up for it. He pressed the button to move on to the next section. Suddenly, his surroundings warped, and he was standing in a vast, open arena. Someone had designed this part using a special skill, maybe illusion or teleportation. Either way, this was the hands-on phase of the test. A 3-minute trial against waves of clones. He had to prove his strength by surviving till the end. The weapon would materialize based on his thoughts. Naturally, Cole chose twin pistols, the same ones he used alongside weapon magic conversion, though his other skills seemed locked out for now. A countdown began. Cole activated his enhanced vision, locking in. The dummies appeared, but they didn't look anywhere near as tanky as the training clone he'd fought before. Perfect. He'd clear this stage as fast as possible. This wasn't how the trial was supposed to go. Anyone could crush those clones if given firearms. She claimed it was basically cheating. And then there was Cole's written test. He'd written that his life had been smooth, with no hardships, and that his team struggles were about making everyone obey him. To Linda, it looked like he wasn't taking the whole thing seriously at all. Michael partly agreed. Guns weren't exactly practical weapons for hunters. In real combat, They were almost useless against monsters and couldn't hold mana efficiently. Once a weapon left a hunter's body, its mana started to dissipate instantly, which meant that using firearms required charging every single bullet with mana, an incredibly difficult process. Plus, guns couldn't store much mana in the first place, so most hunters preferred swords or polearms. Firing mana-loaded bullets in rapid bursts was something only a freak like Ethan could manage. Still, Bill admitted the contestant intrigued him, and Michael nodded in agreement. The kid had shown insane tactical insight, spotting a loophole in the rules, and in the end, results were what truly mattered. Besides, this wasn't the final selection. If Cole crossed a line, they could always disqualify him later. Michael noted that Cole probably viewed weapons differently from them. Linda asked how, but no one could say for sure. Maybe Cole believed guns could actually be effective tools for hunters. Michael doubted it, but decided to give him a chance. This time, with just one pistol. The judge wanted to see if Cole could prove him wrong. Meanwhile, Derek was telling his coach what had happened with Sean. Luckily, his friend hadn't suffered any major injuries. Still, the situation was bizarre. Sean might not excel at close combat, but his overall skill was undeniably top tier. Yet somehow, Cole walked away unscathed, and Sean had been beaten half to death. "What's done is done," the coach said, shifting the topic to Derek's own application for hunters. The next generation. Derek perked up. He'd been meaning to bring that up. He'd be busy with filming for a while. The coach asked if that kid, the one who fought Sean, was entering the show too. Derek wasn't sure, but promised to ask the guy next time they met. The coach wished him luck in his training, and the two parted ways. Things were starting to get interesting. Sean had also applied for the show, and the coach couldn't wait to see how that would turn out. Cole arrived at the main stadium where the show would be filmed. It had been a long time since he'd last stood here, the very place where his journey had once begun. The Hunter League was divided into 3 divisions. The first division fought inside the tower, while the second and third competed in massive VR arenas. Back then, Cole used to wonder why the stadiums were so big, considering they were rarely used. Now it made sense. They existed for moments like this. Among them came Emily Stewart and Nathan Jones. This show had aired long before Cole's original debut, so he didn't expect to see so many recognizable faces. In fact, there were quite a few of them, and several promising rookies as well. He couldn't help but wonder who'd win this time, though deep down he already knew it would be him. Derek waved from the crowd, calling him over to sit beside him. He had assumed Cole would still be laid up in the hospital. To Derek, it must have looked like Cole had taken a serious beating. Sean, on the other hand, had been put on probation, 3 weeks until full recovery. Cole asked how Derek had ended up here, and the guy explained he didn't really have a choice. Pro teams were scouting academy students, so he needed to make an impression. Smoke filled the air above the stadium, and the host appeared through the haze. He spoke with booming energy. They were always searching for new faces, new legends. The birth of a new hunter, one who would shape the future of the league, began here. He welcomed the audience to the most spectacular show on Earth. From a flurry of glowing fragments, a massive tower materialized above the arena. Here, the viewers would witness the rise of the next generation's greatest hunters. Every one of the contestants present had outshined thousands of awakened individuals across the nation. The odds of reaching the finals were 1 in 43. A new era of Korean hunters was about to begin. The host then introduced the 3 judges. Linda Jones, leader of the Korean Hunter League, with 3 national titles under her belt. Michael Phelps, Korea's top athlete on the global stage, runner-up in the World Hunter League. And Bill the Crab. Those were some heavy names, the kind Cole had once stood shoulder to shoulder with. Not that he thought he'd ever lose to any of them. The contestants would now take on missions assigned by these 3 judges. The first-place winner would walk away with 500 million won, and a custom-made weapon forged by Morris Workshop. Insane. Even their basic weapons cost hundreds of millions. But a custom-made one? That was reserved only for those deemed truly worthy. Maybe, just maybe, Cole could regain the strength he once had. Faster than before. Linda took the mic and began explaining the first challenge. The 100 contestants gathered here had beaten out over 4,300 others, but it was still too many. The League needed true hunters, so the first mission would be a survival game set inside an ancient dungeon once used by real hunters. The goal: survive until only 20 remained standing, and the top 5 performers would earn an advantage in the next round. The test began. In a flash of light, every contestant was teleported into the arena, the land of lost souls. In his previous life, this had been the stage for the final round. Cole knew this place like the back of his hand. The dungeon's layout, its core mechanics, even the flow of its ecosystem. There was even a secret dungeon here. A grin crept across his face as he began planning his next move. Linda figured that in a survival challenge like this, there'd be no room for shortcuts. Cole had breezed through the qualifiers without even showing much skill. Some might argue it showed how sharp his mind was, but Linda wasn't buying that. Survival mode tested the essentials of a true hunter: combat instinct, scouting ability, and resource management. Fake stood no chance here. The Hunter League wasn't something to underestimate. The overall skill level among the contestants was insane. It seemed Linda had cooked up something wild. It was the perfect way to weed out the inexperienced and unprepared. Suddenly, one of the staff members shouted, there was a problem. One of the contestants was leaving the mission zone. Bill leaned forward and asked to zoom in on the feed. The screen showed Cole standing before a strange, sealed door. Linda's jaw dropped. How the hell did he know about that place? Hidden behind that door was an artifact, one of the treasures of the land of lost souls. Artifacts were rare dungeon relics, each taking wildly different forms and powers. Sometimes, just finding one could mean instant victory. But this dungeon had never been used for official missions. No one should even know it existed. Not even the First Division players, let alone a random contestant. There was no way Cole should have known. Michael said if it was a system glitch, they'd need to look into it. But Linda shook her head. It wasn't. This virtual world was built directly from the real dungeon's data. And Cole had just accessed a hidden zone, a place unknown even to official League players. That's why it wasn't marked on the map. Michael frowned and asked what exactly was hidden there. Ether, but that could only be done by stopping the entire match. Ether couldn't be carried into the real world, but it could be used in the simulation. Michael noted that something that powerful definitely had a guardian. Guardians were monsters that protected artifacts. The stronger the relic, the deadlier its guardian. Linda's eyes lit up as she confirmed his theory. The guardian of Ether was a cube. Cole finally stepped inside. His memories of this place were foggy. It had been so long, but he found the exact spot he was looking for. If he managed to take down the guardian and claim the Ether, winning this round would be child's play. The cube began to split apart into smaller fragments, glowing with blinding light. Cole jumped back. One wrong move and that light could have fried him. Good thing he'd faced this thing before. The cube was a high-tech relic, a remnant of the tower's ancient ruins. He'd once destroyed it in the finals to claim the Ether and secure his victory. Finding it mid-match this time gave him an opening, one he fully intended to use, banned or not. Using his weapon transmutation skill, Cole reshaped his sword into a crowbar-like form. If his hunch was right, the same trick would work again. He leapt forward and swung. It took effort, but he managed to chip off a fragment of the cube. He hit the ground hard, but at least he got a piece. Fighting a monster-type guardian at his current level would have been a nightmare. But this cube was different. A machine built solely to guard ancient relics. Once you learned its attack pattern, you could outsmart it. The cube morphed into two massive metallic hands. Cole read the timing perfectly. The moment they clapped together, he was already gone. And he didn't waste his chance. The hands shattered into hundreds of tiny shards. Just before dodging its next strike, Cole tossed the broken fragment between the hands. No matter how tough the cube was, that piece was just as strong. Naturally, the feedback broke it apart. Time to grab the ether. A golden staircase materialized before him, leading to a pedestal with a glowing chest. It had been ages since Cole last laid eyes on ether. Even if this one wasn't real, nostalgia still hit hard. Everything was going according to plan. The artifact was now in his hands. He attached it to his weapon, letting its glow pulse through the metal. A new awakened talent appeared, ether. It allowed him to use his mana to forge perfect replicas of the artifact's power. Defeating the Guardian counted as a special achievement, granting him another skill. Lucky day for the hero. He summoned his twin pistols again, ready to put the new ability to the test. Judging by the bullet marks, it looked like Ether would let him use his guns far sooner than he expected. In his previous life, Cole had possessed an enormous mana pool, enough to fire bullets made entirely of it. But he hadn't yet triggered full bloom, so his current mana reserves were still limited. Maybe Ether could help him compensate for that. It was good enough for suppressive fire, though accuracy would still be an issue. But Cole could work with that. The judges watched closely as he once again drew his pistols. So this was how he intended to use Ether. But how in the world had he dodged that laser blast earlier? Since the cube wasn't a living entity, Michael guessed Cole had figured out its attack pattern. Still, what were the odds he actually knew that? Linda said that kind of insight was possible for pro hunters like them. But for a contestant? Impossible. Maybe he had some sort of precognition skill that predicted enemy moves. Even putting that aside, the fact that Cole had defeated the Guardian using a fragment of itself was genius. Linda recalled Michael's earlier words, that true hunters were often eccentric, unpredictable people hiding massive potential. Meanwhile, Freddy was killing it, literally. He ranked first in the elimination count. Everything was going exactly as the Seoul Private Academy's top team had predicted. With only 60 contestants left, this round would soon be over. Freddy was convinced no one could challenge him in a one-on-one fight. Then he heard it. The sharp crack of gunfire echoing through the forest. Cole finally stepped out of hiding, realizing he'd been underground too long. 60 participants were already gone. But finding them all would be impossible. He'd settle for breaking into the top 5. Still, he decided to take out as many as he could along the way. That's when he spotted Sean hiding in the bushes, waiting to ambush another player. Cole silently approached from behind and tapped the trickster on the shoulder. Sean yelped and dropped to the ground in shock. Cole calmly said he had a little problem and hoped Sean could help him out. Enraged, Sean shouted that Cole was dead meat and called him a bastard. The guy got even angrier and shoved him back. Perfect. If Cole could provoke him into using his ability, then he could exploit the reduced power area of effect and snatch the kills for himself. Sean clearly wasn't planning to help, but that was fine. Cole would change his mind. The hero started shouting attack cues. Head, gut, swinging his fists in rhythm. Soon, Sean's face was covered in scrapes and bruises. Gasping, Sean asked what Cole wanted. The hero suggested they team up, but Sean snapped that he wanted nothing to do with him. That's when Cole's pistol materialized in his hand. He fired a warning shot right beside Sean's foot, then aimed the barrel at his head, saying that in that case, he'd just have to remove him. Or Sean could help and stay alive. Cornered, Sean cursed and asked what Cole needed from him. 2 nearby contestants were fighting in the forest. Cole took them both out with a single strike. But then a blade came spinning toward them from behind. Sean reacted just in time, stopping the flying sword mid-air with his gravity skill. The sound of gunfire had been too loud. It drew unwanted attention. A swarm of contestants was now heading their way. Among them was none other than Freddie, looking absolutely furious. The Hunter League had always been a team sport. Naturally, not everyone was suited for offense. Though Sean held third place with 8 kills, gravity was far more effective as a support skill on the battlefield. Michael noted that Sean was doing fine for now, but he might end up as Cole's next victim. Linda disagreed. If Cole wanted him gone, he'd have already pulled the trigger. The judges noticed the two seemed to be communicating. It looked like Cole was planning to use Sean as a support, but how had he found such a perfect partner so quickly? Surely they hadn't met beforehand. Could Cole have a skill that lets him read or identify others' abilities? Michael was probably overthinking it. Bill, however, thought they made a surprisingly good pair. Sean could restrain enemies with gravity, while Cole obliterated them with his ether-infused pistols. Still, Michael wasn't convinced. Their opponents wouldn't go down that easily. It wasn't raw power, weapon choice, or even team composition. The simplest, most brutal method: overwhelm the enemy with sheer numbers. Cole had Sean on his side, sure, but Sean was just a support. No matter how hard they tried, it was unlikely they'd win. That's probably what Freddie and his team believed. Cole narrowly dodged a flying sword. A nostalgic thrill surged through him. For Freddie, though, this was all new. The guy couldn't tell what kind of weapon Cole was using, but it looked strange. Freddie planned to crush him outright and sent another blade slicing through the air. Cole fired back in rhythm. Everything was falling perfectly into place. In his previous life, Freddie had been able to control multiple swords at once through telekinesis, but not now. That made defending against Cole's barrage much harder. Freddie ducked behind a tree, dodging a storm of glowing bullets. Unlike before, he was actually using strategy this time. Meanwhile, another contestant charged at Cole from close range, clearly inexperienced. Bad move. Get that close to someone with a gun, and your chance of survival drops to 0. 1 down. Using his all-seeing eye, Cole spotted 2 more hiding in the bushes. He'd take them out while Freddie was still pinned down. The swordswoman went down first, then the archer, both eliminated. That made 7 kills total for Cole. Only one left: Freddie. The guy's ability to deflect every bullet was impressive, even if Cole's shots were a bit slower due to his low mana reserves. It didn't matter. Freddie was beginning to lose his rhythm. Cole activated the all-seeing eye, waited for the perfect moment, and fired while Freddie was guarding. The shot landed clean. Cole grinned. Finally, a satisfying hit. But before he could finish the job, the round ended. The 20 surviving contestants were teleported back to the stadium. Damn, the judge, considering hunters made up only a fraction of all awakened, it was an impressive feat. The league needed people like the first generation of hunters, those who once protected humanity. Michael hoped the survival match had taught them what it truly meant to be a hunter. Details about the next challenge would be revealed the following week. Until then, the contestants were free to train in the league's gym facilities. Michael strongly recommended they make use of them, at least once. The judges wished everyone luck as the results appeared. In the final ranking, Cole placed 5th. Freddie took 1st. Mission complete. And the awakened talent Ether remained with him. Derek ran up, throwing an arm around his friend's shoulder. He'd heard Cole made it to 5th place. Cole smiled and asked if Derek had managed to pass as well. Derek nodded. Everyone had been talking about Cole's pistol. He was dying to know how Cole had even managed to get his hands on it, let alone make it fire. But before Cole could answer, a group of producers approached and told him to get ready for an interview. They seated him in front of a green screen, adjusted the lighting, and started recording. The first question: why had he decided to join the show? Cole thought for a moment and simply said that there wasn't a better candidate than himself. The host congratulated him on reaching the finals and asked for his thoughts on the first stage. Cole replied that things could have gone better, but he passed the trial just as he was meant to. He'd faced many opponents, yet none of them had truly felt like a worthy rival. He admitted he had some concerns about Freddie, though he wouldn't call him a true rival either. The host laughed and asked how it happened, then that Cole only placed fifth. With a sly grin, Cole said it wouldn't be any fun if he took first place right from the start. The cameraman and host exchanged looks. This guy was something else. After the interview, many contestants gathered in the cafeteria for lunch. Derek sighed heavily and Cole asked what was wrong. Derek groaned that answering all those interview questions had been torture. They kept comparing him to Sean, and it made him incredibly uncomfortable. It was no wonder. Sean had always tormented him, and Derek wasn't the type to badmouth his seniors. So instead, he told them his real rival was Cole. That, in hindsight, was probably worse. He should have just agreed it was Sean. Derek asked what kind of questions Cole had been asked. Cole said it was mostly the usual. Things like, "Who do you think will win?" Naturally, he'd answered that it would be him. Derek guessed he must have at least mentioned Freddie or Emily. Cole might have been confident, but Derek insisted that those two were on another level, even among Academy elites. They were, as he put it, the aces of the team. Derek thought they could easily compete in the pro league. He was sure Cole would agree if he ever saw them in action. But that remark made Cole's expression darken. Had Derek really believed all this time that they were above him? If he kept thinking like that, he'd never achieve anything. It was better to abandon such thoughts altogether. Cole stood up abruptly and said he was going to train. Maybe he'd been too harsh on Derek, but some truths needed to be spoken. Everyone's talent was more or less equal, save for a few rare exceptions. Those who truly stood above others were the ones who never took their eyes off the summit. There was no point in thinking of oneself as lesser, especially at Derek's age. Just then, a guy named Dustin approached. He'd heard Cole had fought Freddie during the first stage. He was curious what that was like. No one at the academy had ever managed to beat Freddie, after all. Dustin asked for Cole's name and Cole replied cautiously, then asked what the guy wanted. Dustin said Freddie had been furious when the survival match ended. At that moment, Freddie himself appeared, grabbed Dustin by the collar, and began dragging him away, apologizing as he went. Honestly, Cole had no idea what had just happened. He'd heard the two were from the same academy and seemed to get along fairly well. Curious, Cole activated the all-seeing eye to examine them. Freddie's sword mastery and acceleration skills were top tier. Dustin's raw power and physical strength, meanwhile, were formidable. Since Full Bloom wasn't active yet, some of their stats even exceeded Cole's by 50%, sometimes twice as much. He'd managed to win the last round thanks to Ether, but the next stage wouldn't be nearly as forgiving. For many aspiring hunters dreaming of going pro, this was where their journey truly began. The judges gathered, discussing the standout contestant from Seoul's private academy, Freddie. In his interview, he'd shared that becoming a hunter had been his dream since childhood, though the path hadn't been easy. He'd failed the academy's entrance exams twice. Yet, no matter what, he never gave up. That was when Freddie realized hard work always pays off. It taught him not only perseverance, but the drive to keep refining himself. That's why he believes unwavering resolve and persistence are the true keys to overcoming any obstacle. Meanwhile, Derek and Cole hadn't expected the show to air so soon. Technology had advanced farther than they imagined. The comments were surprisingly decent. Many viewers found Freddie's answers a little too dry and monotonous, but they praised his humility. On the other hand, the next contestant had taken a far less conventional approach. And then, in his interview, he'd said that he never really faced any serious hardships on his path to becoming a hunter. If his teammates simply left all the decisions to him, then there would be no problems at all. While Freddie's motivation was self-improvement, Cole simply believed there was no better candidate than himself. Yet, despite their differences, both shared one belief: that no opponent was truly worthy of them. Cole reached out, turned off Derek's phone and told him to get moving. It was time to train. Derek pouted. They hadn't even reached the survival game segment yet. Cole told him to just watch the replay later. Then Derek asked why Cole only trained his legs. Cole responded with a question of his own. What was Derek's role? The boy admitted he was a ranged fighter, focused on massive damage. Exactly, Cole said. But what else do ranged fighters need? Mobility. Perhaps Derek had noticed it during the survival match. Because elite melee fighters like Freddy either possessed exceptional mobility or attack power so great it could threaten even long-range combatants. That's why Cole's mobility had to match or even surpass that of close-range fighters. Suddenly, a man's voice cut through their conversation. Someone had entered the gym and corrected Cole. He said that in the Korean Hunter League, it was rare to see strategies centered around eliminating ranged fighters. He asked Cole's opinion. But who was this man? He clearly wasn't an ordinary observer if he had access to this facility. Cole replied that it was true, but judging by how teams played against Britain's ECG or France's ALD, those teams prioritized ranged fighters above all else. In other words, it depended entirely on what kind of ranged fighter one faced. And that alone, Cole said, was reason enough to keep training his legs. The man smiled faintly. So, Cole was claiming that his long-range prowess would make him a top priority target for melee fighters. The man laughed. Bold words indeed. Intriguing. Yet, he warned, overconfidence was one of the main causes of failure. He advised Cole to take that as wisdom born of long experience, and said he'd be watching him closely. Then the man left, leaving behind only questions. Who was he, really? Still, in his office, Adam's assistant remarked that ranged fighters relied mainly on support skills and raw attack power. Adam shook his head. That wasn't quite right. Even the most powerful strike meant nothing without precision. Accuracy. That was what truly mattered. Adam told him to forget it and drifted into his memories. Long ago, he'd once wondered why his old comrade always focused on leg training instead of mana control. The man had told him that for ranged fighters, the legs were everything. Monsters always went for them first. They knew ranged fighters were weak up close. After every shot, mobility was their only lifeline. A young Adam had been stunned by how simple it sounded. Once a ranged fighter's position was exposed, death was certain. Hard for Adam to grasp. He'd always fought up close. But it was true. Ranged fighters needed mobility more than anything. The same applied to the modern Hunter League. Of course, not to the current one. Most of the league's best hunters had perished long ago. Yet in the higher leagues, especially the world stage, that principle still held true. Cole hadn't even joined the league yet, and he was already thinking about international competition. Was that arrogance or confidence? His stats were growing faster than in his previous life. He suspected it was thanks to Full Bloom. The skill had two defining traits. It granted new talents upon completing specific missions, essentially entirely new abilities, and it drastically accelerated the growth of one's stats. Truly an extraordinary skill. Derek then asked what Cole planned to do after training, and whether he could recommend something for him too. Derek was in great shape after years of academy training. He didn't need to push himself nearly as hard as Cole did. Cole replied that he didn't know him well enough to recommend a routine. Then, with a faintly sinister grin, Cole suggested something else, a duel. The two stepped out onto the designated sparring field. Derek was stunned to realize that Cole also knew how to handle a sword. The boy knew he'd have no chance if Cole used his pistols, but in a sword fight, he wouldn't lose so easily. Cole struck first, his movements sharp and deliberate. Derek blocked and parried, but tension built with every clash. He couldn't understand why it felt so heavy. It was just a standard training blade. So why was it this hard to fight back? Cole had quietly activated weapon transmutation. Derek figured the gap must have come from their difference in talent levels. He couldn't even reach Cole anymore. And now, the hero's weapon had morphed into a massive greatsword. Derek had no idea how to counter the next attack. Moments later, he was on the ground, drained and breathless. Cole asked what he thought now of his so-called rival. Derek admitted defeat. Cole was better than him, plain and simple. And then, Cole mentioned that he'd been holding back. His tone was so even that it didn't sound like a joke. The words stung. Derek's eyes burned. Was he really that weak? Was his talent truly so far beneath Cole's? Cole suddenly spoke again, explaining the reason for his loss: the wrong weapon. He gestured toward the sword Derek always used and then pointed out its flaws. With Derek's acceleration skill, his advantage lay in speed and split-second decisions. And how could that possibly pair well with a long, heavy blade? The answer: it couldn't. Instead, he should use something built for swift, precise strikes, like a rapier. Cole produced one and handed it over. Combined with Derek's speed, he'd be able to overwhelm enemies with rapid-fire blows. The boy blinked in disbelief. He'd never even considered that possibility. After training, Derek admitted he was still uncertain, but at least he had an idea now. Then Cole overheard a nearby whisper, someone calling him arrogant for dueling the Academy's reject. Apparently, someone had been watching them the entire time. Whoever it was clearly didn't like him, and now decided to provoke him outright. Cole wasn't the type to ignore such things. Calmly, he asked if the guy could actually back up his words. The boy blinked, thinking he misheard. But Cole's stare left no room for doubt. The hero invited him to settle it in a match, unless, of course, he was afraid. The insult hit hard. The boy's fury flared, and he agreed. But then Cole realized who he was. It was Liam, the one who'd tied for 5th place with him in the survival game. His stats and abilities were impressive, far beyond Cole's raw numbers. If victory came down to strength alone, Cole would lose without question. Liam proposed a battle room. Cole smirked, saying he wouldn't even need his pistols to beat the arrogance out of him. Liam was one of the most skilled newcomers. And besides, he already knew about the pistols, making them useless anyway. They took their positions. There was a real chance Cole could lose this fight. But retreat wasn't in his nature. He charged first, blade flashing. Liam countered, unleashing 3 flying daggers. He was a mid-range fighter. Cole's plan was simple: keep pushing forward, close the distance, and crush his rhythm. He deflected the first 3 daggers, but couldn't dodge the next wave in time. Fortunately, Ether, obtained through Full Bloom, activated just in time and nullified the strike. Without it, that attack could have ended the fight instantly. Liam continued throwing blades, maintaining his distance. On top of that, he wielded telekinesis, certain that his barrage would finish Cole off. But somehow, Cole managed to redirect the daggers mid-flight, a hidden trump card. He transformed his sword into a dagger and hurled it straight at Liam. Liam scoffed, amused. With telekinesis, he could stop such a thing easily. But that was exactly what Cole wanted him to think. That first dagger was nothing more than a setup, the prelude to the true attack that followed. Liam caught 4 of the knives mid-air with his telekinesis. But even his focus had limits. No one could control that many targets with such precision in that short a span. Which meant the last blade, the one he thought he'd fully stopped, slipped through just as his attention fractured, striking him before he could react. The system announced the result: Cole, victory. From the observation room, Michael and a stern-looking man had been watching closely. Michael had mentioned this one, the dark horse of the competition. The man adjusted a sleek pair of analysis goggles, his expression sharpening. Impressive sense of strategy, he remarked, hiding 3 of the knives in the attack pattern. Clever, especially given his modest stats. Michael nodded. He already knew Cole's numbers were far from top tier. "You've met him, haven't you?" the man asked, his tone unreadable. He wanted to know exactly what kind of abilities this boy possessed. Cole couldn't have devised that tactic without knowing about Liam's telekinesis, unless he had a way to see it coming. Michael mused. Perhaps something akin to the legendary Eye of Analysis, a power once wielded by only two people, including the first-generation hunter, Philip Kreiser. The eye was a rare and coveted skill, one capable of dissecting an opponent's every stat and pattern. Maybe people were overestimating Cole just because he'd predicted his opponent's ability, but Michael suspected the opposite, that they were underestimating him. Cole had known about the hidden dungeon. He'd aimed only at clone microchips during the qualifiers. Every move of his had intent. If he ever debuted in Division 1, people would start calling him the reincarnation of Philip Kreiser himself. Michael was sure of it. The man beside him already wanted Cole for his team. His own eye of analysis could read a person's stats, but not their skills. Yet Cole had recognized telekinesis and built an entire strategy around countering it. "Which team will he join?" the man finally asked, his interest now obvious. Unfortunately, the sponsoring teams had first pick of contestants. The man clenched his jaw. He'd find a way to recruit Cole no matter what it took. Meanwhile, the hero himself had no idea that Full Bloom had just logged his victory as a special achievement. But he wasn't in a hurry to figure it out. Derek had been training non-stop, convinced he could finally beat Cole. Cole told him not to be ridiculous, but Derek was determined. He'd grown a lot stronger. His swordsmanship had never been this refined. He truly had improved, thanks to Cole's advice. But even so, he still didn't stand a chance against him. Soon after, all contestants were summoned to a special classroom. Cole and Derek took their seats, exchanging curious glances. Was this another lecture? The judges entered. Linda greeted them warmly and asked how their week-long break had gone, or rather, a week of training. For some, it had clearly paid off. For others, not so much. Either way, she said, there was still much they needed to learn. Each of them was a promising talent, full of potential, but between them and true professional hunters lay an enormous gap. That was why the judges had arranged a mentorship program. 3 mentors stood at the front of the room. Each had competed in Division 1, veterans with championships and battle honors behind them. They would be responsible for both instruction and evaluation, teaching the trainees how to operate as real hunters. Their progress would be measured through a 3-on-3 mock league, simulating the pressure of real matches. Just the first to speak was Bruce Tiles, mentor of melee combatants. His gaze was sharp as a blade. He despised those who lacked resolve, and hated arrogant fools even more. Stay humble, he warned, and take every lesson seriously. After reviewing performances from the qualifiers, the survival game, and last week's training, the judges finalized each contestant's designated role. One by one, names would be called to join their assigned mentors. The first name was Cole. They placed him in the melee division. A collective gasp filled the room. Cole could not comprehend why he had been placed in this division. Among those gathered stood Freddie, and Emily as well, and even Derek. This group was filled with promising talents, each carrying the air of someone destined for greatness. Onto the field stepped Mr. Tiles, his presence heavy and commanding. He demanded that his apprentices abandon everything they had learned before this day. To him, their academies meant nothing. Every one of them was weaker than even the lowest-ranked hunters of the 3rd Division. As many might have noticed during the Hunter League matches, true hunters relied not only on strength, but also on tools and skills. Mobility devices infused with mana, such as the air anchor and the air step. These instruments enabled breathtaking agility, turning battlefields into dazzling arenas of motion and power. Mr. Tiles would be the one to teach them the mastery of these techniques. He had no need for melee fighters who could not command the skies. The training began at once. It was far more difficult than anyone anticipated. Cole had once used such devices as though they were extensions of his own body. Now came the test, whether his old instincts still lingered in his muscles. The mentor's voice roared across the field, furious at their failures. These students were meant to become stars of the Korean Hunter League, yet they stumbled like infants. The third division was not called the graveyard of rookies for nothing. It was the perfect snare for the unprepared and the arrogant alike. Mr. Tiles's constant shouting grated on Cole's nerves, making focus nearly impossible. Derek, too, struggled visibly. But such confusion was to be expected. The trainees had received no proper instruction at all. Seeing Derek's errors, Cole ordered him to descend. The boy hesitated, questioning whether Cole would even train himself, knowing the mentor would soon inspect them. Cole dismissed the concern, noting that Derek should focus on his own shortcomings if he hoped to make any progress. Derek's next inquiry led Cole to explain that he must first establish the correct length of the mana cord, and then maintain a steady flow of energy. Otherwise, the line would constantly fluctuate. This was why Derek failed to balance. His mana flow was unstable. He also needed to center his weight properly. When suspended in the air, his own body should act as the core of gravity. Cole demonstrated this effortlessly, landing gracefully upon his feet. With proper control, preventing a fall or shifting direction became far easier. The key lay in maintaining a constant surge of mana. Derek repeated these words silently, and to his astonishment succeeded. He believed it proof of innate talent. After all, he had managed it on his first attempt. Their moment of triumph was cut short as Mr. Tiles's voice thundered again, berating them for idle chatter. This was no playground. The mentor, unimpressed, demanded the name of the one who had drawn his attention. Cole introduced himself calmly, unbothered by the man's attempts at intimidation. The mentor accused him of standing idle out of arrogance, believing himself above the rest. Cole neither denied nor confirmed the claim. His silence said enough. Yet curiosity flickered within him. He wished to see how they intended to test them using the air anchor and air step. In truth, Cole's soul carried the weight of another lifetime. As one older in spirit, he considered it his duty to guide the younger. Mr. Tiles, convinced he had allowed them enough time, began the official test. Meanwhile, Michael, watching from afar, was bewildered by the roster. Cole's name appeared under the melee division, surely a mistake. He had expected Cole to be placed among the ranged fighters. Linda, however, had chosen differently, reasoning that his familiarity with close-quarters combat suited the role, and, more importantly, that his pride needed tempering. Her plan was simple, yet deliberate: to push the arrogant prodigy to his breaking point by placing him under the harshest mentor possible. By doing so, she would pit him against a veteran hunter of the First Division, forcing him to confront his own limits. In her mind, everything was proceeding perfectly. She would drag the overconfident newcomer down from the clouds. The test required each trainee to ascend toward the air anchor suspended above the field. Mr. Tiles hoped that the one bold enough to act superior would now prove his worth before all. Failure would mean he was unfit to bear the title of hunter. To the others, it seemed that the mentor's true goal was to break Cole entirely through this trial. But Cole's resolve hardened. He intended to discover what Mr. Tiles would do if he succeeded against all odds. Mr. Tiles promised that, should Cole succeed, he would grant him absolute freedom to do whatever he pleased during future lessons. Yet deep inside, the mentor was certain such a feat was impossible. The air anchor hung 100 meters above the ground, a height unreachable for anyone attempting to use it for the first time. Even intermediate users would struggle to reach such altitude. As expected, every trainee failed miserably. But then, a sudden flash caught the mentor's eye. Freddy, channeling power through his sword, surged upward. It was something far greater than mere telekinesis. Though he wasn't relying on the air anchor, his method might still carry him higher than the others. Meanwhile, all eyes turned to Cole, whose movements displayed an almost unreal grace. Mr. Tiles turned toward him, realizing the young man seemed utterly unafraid of falling. Yet in the next heartbeat, Cole's air step faltered, sending him plummeting through the air. With swift reflexes, he seized the mana tether, regaining balance just before hitting the ground. Now, only a few meters separated him from the coveted anchor above. Moments later, victory was his. The mentor could scarcely believe it. His students were handling these devices for the first time, and yet Cole had already surpassed every expectation. The following day found them back in the classroom. The lesson turned to the fundamentals of melee combat. Mr. Tiles spoke of two primary roles in close-quarters warfare: the initiators, those who lead the charge and dictate the flow of battle. And though the topic was vital, the endless theory after such intense practice nearly lulled Cole to sleep. At least, the mentor could not scold him for his weariness. The second role, familiar to all, belonged to the close combat fighters, the ones who joined the fray after the initiators struck. In truth, there existed many more classifications, but this was all they needed to know for now. For Cole, who had spent years in the Hunter League, such lessons were child's play. Winning arguments with instructors was practically a hobby. Yet something unexpected awaited him. A folded note slipped quietly into his pocket by an unknown hand. The message proposed a secret meeting behind the academy at a spot 7 o'clock from the training center. The sender claimed to have something interesting to show him. It seemed worth investigating. Cole arrived at the appointed place, but no one was there. For a moment, he wondered if it had been a prank. Yet the all-seeing eye within him detected movement below the ground. Something hidden. Approaching cautiously, he discovered a staircase descending into the darkness. Step by step, he made his way down into a concealed chamber beneath the academy. There, waiting amid the shadows, stood Chairman Adam, a man whose name Cole had already researched online. The chairman smiled, evidently pleased that the young hunter had managed to find the secret entrance. Cole remarked that the note's directions had been absurdly vague. Only someone with supernatural awareness could have found the way. It became clear that Adam had merely wanted to test whether Cole was resourceful enough to locate the place. Cole then demanded to know the true reason for this meeting. The chairman had been watching every moment of the broadcast featuring Cole, though only one episode had aired so far. Yet his knowledge went far deeper than what the public had seen. He had witnessed Cole's private training sessions, where the young hunter displayed extraordinary mobility and perception. Cole had piqued his interest. The chairman had even begun to make predictions about the outcome of the show. His intuition told him that Cole would be the one to triumph. But that was not all. Still, Cole's curiosity lingered. The chairman had promised to show him something interesting. Adam pressed a concealed switch, and the heavy doors beside them slid open with a resonant hum. Beyond them lay a collection of S-rank weapons and specialized mana equipment unlike anything Cole had seen since his former life. He asked why such treasures were being shown to him. Adam wondered if the young man truly did not desire them. Of course, he did. Among the gleaming relics, Cole recognized a weapon from his past life, Reborn, a legendary sword once awarded to him after a demonstration match, forged as both a blade and a firearm. The weapon had been a joy to wield, elegant yet devastating, and it had carried its own mysterious soul when transformed into its gun form. The chairman offered to lend Cole one of the weapons, should he choose to accept. Cole, unimpressed, asked why not simply gift it instead. Each one was worth far more than anything produced by the famed Morass workshop. Cole sighed. At the end of the day, a weapon was just a tool. Tired of circling around the issue, he pressed the chairman to reveal his true intentions. Adam seemed almost amused by his bluntness. Most people tried to flatter him once they learned he was a first-generation hunter and the chairman of the league. But this young man looked at him not with reverence, but with the calm detachment of someone who stood on equal ground, a rarity even in this world of hunters. Adam extended an unexpected offer. He wanted Cole to join the Hunter Association, not as an employee, but as a full-fledged hunter. Should he accept, Adam promised to let him borrow any of the legendary weapons displayed before him. Yet Cole questioned what he stood to gain from such a deal. He already knew the meaning of joining the association. What he failed to see was any personal benefit. If that was the best Adam could offer, then this conversation was over. He turned to leave, thinking about his next class. But Adam stopped him, warning that perhaps he was overestimating his abilities. The chairman spoke of countless young prodigies who had risen through the second and third divisions, only to be swallowed by mediocrity. But Cole's interest in such stories was non-existent. For him, the only question that mattered was whether he could succeed or fail by his own hands. He thanked Adam for the courtesy of showing him such treasures and took his leave, calling the old man Grandpa under his breath. Adam remained in silence, struck by admiration as the boy's footsteps faded into the shadows. Later, Cole returned to the classroom, where Derek immediately voiced his worry that Cole might not have made it back in time. Derek still remembered the incident with Mr. Tiles and couldn't help but fret while Cole brushed it off, claiming he wasn't nearly as careless as others assumed. Being late wouldn't get them expelled anyway. The show, after all, had to go on. Eventually, Cole mentioned his encounter with an old man who wanted to meet with him. In truth, he could have accepted the offer that had been made to him. Yet with the experience he carried, he believed he could manage just fine without borrowed weapons. After all, the ultimate prize of victory was a custom weapon forged by the Morris workshop. He planned to wait until his worth increased. Only then would he show his true power. And if things didn't go as planned, he could always create his own team from scratch. Meanwhile, the judges hoped that the mentorship sessions had been fruitful for the contestants. The time had come to apply what they had learned. The next challenge would be a 3-on-3 aerial combat round. In this phase, the victorious team would advance, while the defeated would be immediately disqualified. To raise the stakes even further, the judges revealed a special prize awaiting the winners, a mana flow stone. The stone amplified both the volume and efficiency of its user's mana, exactly what Cole needed. He would require greater reserves once he began acquiring new abilities. Winning this round had become a necessity. This was no longer a training exercise. It was the beginning of the true selection stage. Every movement, every strike would be broadcast in real time. In truth, the recording had already begun. Their previous performance results would determine the order of selection. The one with the highest score would earn the privilege of choosing teammates first. With that, Michael instructed everyone to move to the waiting chambers. They would meet again once the battles commenced. Filming by the judges concluded, and the contestants prepared to form their teams. Cole's previous achievements in the survival game had impressed many, yet his arrogance remained notorious. He was competent, but utterly lacking in empathy toward others. Linda believed that such a flaw would hinder him. Team battles required more than raw strength. Michael glanced at her curiously. Despite 20 contestants still remaining, she had decided to hold a team-based aerial match. Considering her usual preference for simpler formats, an individual trial would have made far more sense. Michael argued that the contestants weren't ready for team combat yet, but Linda already knew that. She admitted, perhaps too candidly, that her real intent was to force Cole's disqualification. Regardless of how skilled one might be with an air anchor or air bat, isolation meant vulnerability, like ducklings lost in a storm. On the massive aerial stage, competitors would need to cover great distances in seconds, a task that exposed every weakness. Cole's lower mobility stats would once again work against him. Michael had never seen Linda so fixated on a single contestant. She claimed it was because she saw immense potential in him, yet believed that what he needed now was not victory, but humility. Bill agreed. He added that overconfidence was one of the deadliest traits a young hunter could possess. Even veterans of the First Division could fall in an instant if they let arrogance blind their judgment. Michael, however, countered that confidence leading to triumph and arrogance leading to ruin were merely two sides of the same coin. They would soon see which side Cole embodied when he faced the challenges the judges had prepared. Then came the announcement. Cole had secured first place in the rankings. His top score granted him the right to select two teammates of his choice. Without hesitation, he approached Sean and Liam, suggesting that they give this battle everything they had. Liam bristled at the idea, offended that Cole would even consider him. To him, it sounded like mockery. The truth was simpler. He still couldn't accept his earlier defeat at Cole's hands. Sean, on the other hand, posed no issue. He had witnessed Cole's strength with his own eyes, and in the end, he was still just a boy standing before a storm. Cole took command of the upcoming round, deciding that he would lead the team himself. He placed his trust in the others, believing in their potential and relying on their abilities. Liam was stunned by this unexpected confidence, but eventually his resistance softened. Victory demanded sacrifices after all. Even he could swallow his pride if it meant winning. He wanted to know whether there was a plan. That was precisely why Cole had chosen them both. Every move would follow his strategy. The three of them huddled together in quiet discussion, and Cole made them a promise that left the others uneasy. Liam gasped in disbelief, suspecting that Cole must have been joking. Of course, Cole couldn't exactly explain that he carried knowledge from another timeline. He simply told them to follow his lead and avoid making mistakes. A single blunder could hand victory to the enemy, and they all knew it. The pact was made. The 3-on-3 battle of the Junior Hunter League began, set in the vast aerial combat zone. Anyone who touched the ground or became unable to continue would be instantly eliminated. The judges wished the contestants luck as the first match commenced. Cole steadied his thoughts, then teleported onto the battlefield. It was time to act. He materialized atop a skyscraper on the southwestern edge of the arena. From what he could tell, the building was deserted. Sean occupied the southeast sector, while Liam had taken a position to the east, halfway between the center and the perimeter. They remained connected through their earpieces, following Cole's tactical plan. Sooner or later, their paths would converge. For now, Sean and Liam were to advance quietly toward the center, staying unseen for as long as possible. Should they encounter anyone on the way, retreat was the only option. Only 3 teams of 3 participated in this match. With such a large arena, the chance of meeting an opponent early on was slim. That meant Cole would need to draw attention himself, a risk he was more than willing to take. A projectile cut through the air. It didn't matter who fired the shot. The attacker was likely acting alone before regrouping with teammates. Cole ignored the distraction and continued his climb toward the tallest tower at the arena's heart. Meanwhile, Sean and Liam had secured an excellent vantage point and remained hidden. Cole checked whether they had a clear view of the area. They needed eyes on him at all times. They confirmed visual contact, though Cole was likely unable to see them in return. Everything was ready. Cole raised his weapon and fired a signal shot into the sky. The waiting game began. Almost immediately, another presence appeared. Dustin. He demanded to know what Cole was doing there. The boy considered himself lucky, claiming he had long awaited a chance to strike. To him, Cole would be the perfect first target. But before he could act, Dustin's open mic betrayed him. His teammate Freddie instructed him to stall for time, or finish the job if possible. Cole heard every word through the channel. Freddie was already on his way. Time was not on his side. If he delayed too long, Cole would have to face both opponents at once, a dangerous prospect. Dustin tried to distract him, rambling incessantly about Cole's earlier test results. He spoke without pause, mocking, probing, wasting precious seconds. Cole kept silent, his thoughts sharp as a blade. Dustin assumed he was alone. The enemy taunted that if Cole had allies nearby, they would have attacked by now. He offered a feigned apology before pressing for details about Cole's previous battle with Freddy. Freddy, after all, was stronger. That much was no secret. Cole kept his distance, moving swiftly through the air with his anchor of wind. But Dustin had mastered aerial stepping as well and was giving chase without hesitation. Even in midair, his voice refused to stop, words chasing Cole as persistently as his footsteps. Cole vaulted across to another rooftop. He opened fire in return. The bullets failed to connect. Dustin deflected them with practiced precision. The young hunter was skilled, perhaps even gifted. Conventional firearms would not be enough to bring him down. Cole's ether output wasn't as potent as the one he'd accessed during the survival game. Taking this opponent down quickly was impossible. His current weapon lacked the necessary power, and his mana reserves were running low. Then, abruptly, Cole stopped moving. As Freddy advanced, Cole signaled his teammates to act, but no one appeared from the shadows. Freddy and Sean hesitated at first, fear flickering in their eyes, but soon dismissed it as nothing more than a bluff. Freddy unleashed his telekinesis again, and both of them gave chase, certain that Cole's tricks would fail this time. Yet neither realized that Sean had already launched a gravitational strike from afar. Cole's body plummeted through the air, spiraling downward. To the onlookers, it seemed like he had given up on life. But in the next instant, Freddy and Dustin found themselves falling too. Liam's telekinesis caught Cole mid-descent, halting his fall and pulling him back to safety. Freddy and Dustin, however, had no such savior. The realization struck too late. Their strategy had collapsed, and both were eliminated from the match. For a brief moment, Cole felt as though invisible hands were crushing him from all directions. It was unpleasant, but tolerable. Liam could never have imagined using his telekinetic power in such a creative way. Cole's plan had worked flawlessly. Had it come down to direct confrontation, the outcome might have been far worse. He had drawn the enemy's attention, lured them into pursuit, and once they were airborne, Sean's sudden gravitational assault sent them tumbling, while Liam's quick reaction saved Cole from sharing their fate. The opponents were defeated, but the battle wasn't over yet. Cole warned his teammates to stay alert. Others might have witnessed the fight, meaning this tactic wouldn't work twice. Meanwhile, Emily single-handedly dispatched 3 hunters, an impressive feat, though expected from someone of her caliber. The time came to announce the victors. Cole's team had secured the win. Emily berated her teammates for losing to Cole and falling so pathetically. Her disbelief was palpable. After all, they had experience with such matches and still failed miserably. Dustin tried to justify their loss, insisting that Cole's strategy had been flawless and caught them unprepared. Freddy accepted the blame, admitting he should have acted with greater caution. In his previous life, Cole would have done the same. Rather than sulk over defeat, he would dissect every move, every mistake. Later, Liam came to apologize for his harsh words. But embarrassment overtook him. He quickly turned away, muttering that Cole had likely forgotten the whole thing anyway. He was the kind of person who couldn't openly admit fault, even under threat of death. Linda could hardly believe how easily Cole and his team had crushed the competition. The outcome was entirely unexpected. It was a total victory of strategy over strength. Michael commented that this young man was something else entirely. And to think, the test hadn't even been designed to measure tactical intellect. Forming a working plan based solely on teammates' skill data was far from simple. Even more impressive was that Cole had chosen allies he barely got along with, a move both risky and brilliant. Their team had earned the highest score. Each member received a mana flow stone as their prize. The first step of Cole's larger plan was finally complete. With this artifact, He might one day awaken the state known as full bloom. The host congratulated them, wishing that they reach the finals, perhaps even rise to global fame. Yet, not all present were worthy of being called hunters. The losing teams would now face elimination. After all, this was a competitive show. Some had to fall for others to advance. 13 contestants were dismissed, and among them was Derek. The next test would pair contestants in teams of two, forcing them to operate in perfect coordination. Each duo had to advance in sync and capture a designated point on the field. Once captured, they would need to defend it for a full minute. Though there was another option, the kill zone. Fighters could instead occupy battle points and climb the rankings by defeating rivals. Since the number of contestants was uneven, each participant could invite one previously eliminated player as a partner. However, if the main contestant failed to earn enough points, their invited partner would not be disqualified. Just as Cole expected, Freddie and Emily decided to team up, a logical and powerful combination. Choosing a strong ally was the simplest route to survival. Derek, meanwhile, still hadn't found a partner. Cole couldn't help but wonder if the boy could avoid disqualification. Fate seemed to be cornering him, and his next trial would be the risky elimination. Desperate, Derek ran up to Cole, hoping the hero would agree to partner with him. After all, they were from the same academy. But Cole refused without hesitation. To him, sentiment was no reason to compromise strategy. Derek started begging for help, and Cole, somehow, ended up giving him advice, telling him to change weapons and offering a few pointers. Just like that, it looked like he'd accidentally become Derek's mentor. Cole had no idea how that even happened, but whatever. Fine. He gave in. He agreed to help Derek, but only because he didn't really have anything better to do. Besides, he'd been planning to test out that Manhwa stone anyway. He was curious if it would have any real impact on his abilities. Still, he made it clear. Derek had to follow orders completely. No questions, no hesitation. And this would be the last time Cole lent him a hand. That night, back in his room, Cole pulled out the stone. It was time to see what it could really do. As he began absorbing its power, he could feel his mana capacity gradually expanding, the flow of energy inside him growing stronger. If he were to actually swallow the stone, his skill levels would skyrocket instantly. He'd used a similar artifact before, back before his rebirth, and this one seemed to carry the exact same effects. All-seeing eye, weapon magic transmutation, and full bloom began evolving to new levels of mastery. His core stats had definitely increased. Even his total mana count went up by 1. Before this, his ether could only hold an enemy in place for a short while. But now, maybe he could pull off something far more impressive. This power boost was no joke. It rivaled the kind of enhancement granted by the original survival game artifact. Everything worked out perfectly. Cole already had a plan forming for tomorrow's trial. Time to get some rest. Tomorrow was going to be rough. As he drifted off, he began to dream. It started with a small organization teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. After awakening his powers, Cole's potential was finally recognized. A company director soon approached him with an offer to join their team, promising to help him develop his abilities. In return, the director wanted him to activate Full Bloom as soon as possible, since without it, joining the league would be impossible. Cole had been warned that activating it too early would make its effects weaker, so he decided to wait. He joined the team anyway, but since he never unlocked the skill, they wouldn't let him compete. The director tried to pressure him. To the man, players were nothing more than disposable tools, and Cole wasn't special just because of his training. Eventually, Cole gave in and awakened Full Bloom. The director was thrilled when he found out. Cole kept growing stronger, eventually winning the championship cup and immortalizing his name in the scene. But early awakening came with a price. His Full Bloom faded just as fast as it had bloomed. He woke up in a cold sweat. Not the best memories. But this time, things were different. Success was inevitable. He had already built the foundation for his future career, and he'd done it much earlier and better than any other young athlete out there. Sure, for now, keeping up with the top rookies of his generation wasn't easy, but he knew that by mastering and strengthening Full Bloom, he could reach an entirely new level. Screw that past life, he was done with it. The next morning, Cole arrived at the training center and asked if Derek was ready. Derek said he was completely prepared. He'd thought through everything, from warm-ups to battle strategy. Cole was genuinely surprised that he'd come up with a plan of his own. Turns out Derek's strategy was to do exactly whatever Cole told him to do. Cole couldn't believe it. He'd actually hoped for something useful. Nope. The guy was a total idiot. The stadium was packed again. Fans filled the seats, cheering for those taking part in the elimination round. It was time to find out who would be knocked out of the competition today. Cole teleported onto the map. It looked like a regular urban battlefield. Derek nervously asked if they even had a plan. Cole said they were heading straight for the center. They'd sprint forward and try to seize the middle first. Derek started panicking. Freddie and Emily were among the competitors. Those two would definitely attack anyone who tried to enter their area. Charging straight into that zone was basically suicide. Cole told him that with that kind of attitude, he might as well quit now. Derek tried to argue, wanting to rethink everything, but the prep time was almost up. As soon as the match started, they were running straight for the center. Cole told him to get ready, 10 seconds left. No one else here could use air step or air anchor as skillfully as Cole could. The first move was clear: reach the control point and block the others from getting close. Meanwhile, Emily was still holding a grudge. Thanks to Cole, she'd had to fight 3 opponents at once. If it weren't for Cole, they wouldn't even be here. Freddie snapped her out of her thoughts, asking what was on her mind. It was obvious. Emily couldn't stop replaying how Cole had completely outsmarted her. She grabbed Freddie by the shoulder, reminding him to stay sharp and not lose focus. He just needed to keep his eyes on the goal. All that mattered now was avoiding dumb mistakes. Freddie understood, but he still believed Cole wasn't as simple as Emily thought. She was well aware and already had everything planned. The only reason she lost the 3v3 match was because she'd been holding back, doing everything she could to conceal her true abilities. This time would be different. She was ready to unleash her full power and do whatever it took to make sure defeat wasn't even an option. Enough overthinking. If she impressed the judges, she'd stay in the competition, no matter what. Emily's plan was straightforward: take Cole head-on in close combat and end it with a single strike. Meanwhile, Cole noticed Derek still wasn't there. The guy just couldn't keep up. At least Cole had found a solid position to hold. He decided not to waste time. Once Derek caught up, they'd secure the control point. Derek still hesitated, worried that every player's attention would be locked on them. But Cole already had a plan in motion. He told Derek not to rush or play it too safe. He wanted the others to notice him. Then, from an incredible distance, Cole fired his rifle and took down a player with a clean headshot. Just a regular shot, but with insane force. It was exactly like the ether effect from the survival game. It reminded him of Ethan's level, though, honestly, Cole had already surpassed that version of himself long ago. And now, he'd gone even further. Another shot, another downed opponent. The loud crack of the rifle startled Derek, who panicked until Cole calmly confirmed it was his doing. Cole ordered him to turn left, 9 o'clock direction, and move 3 blocks forward. He'd be waiting on the second floor of the blue glass building. Maybe he'd even clear out one of those kill zones while at it. In the judge's booth, Linda was stunned. Michael just smirked. He'd seen this coming. Cole's aim was flawless. The guy really did have talent. Linda agreed, but wondered if maybe he'd just awakened a new ability recently. Michael reminded her that Cole had already shown off his sharpshooting skills back during the selection round. Still, If his aim was that good already, why had he gone after an artifact in the survival game in the first place? And his weapon choice, totally unconventional, the kind even pro players rarely used for training. Maybe he'd upgraded his full bloom skill. According to Linda, it could unlock entirely new talents when enhanced. Suddenly, Adam entered the judges' area. Everyone tensed up, but the chairman told them to stay seated. Word had reached him that a certain participant had caught his interest, and he came to see the boy for himself. Michael asked if the chairman was scouting a potential recruit, but that wasn't quite it. Adam's previous offer had already been turned down. Still, he admitted Cole was a bold kid. If he'd known things would turn out like this, he would have raised his bid. But Adam didn't dwell on regrets. He preferred to keep moving forward, always searching for new answers on the road ahead. He hoped fate would cross his path with Coles again someday. The other three judges were speechless. None of them had expected this twist, yet here it was. Michael admired Adam's optimistic outlook, though he couldn't help but wonder what the old man was really plotting. Meanwhile, Derek finally arrived. Cole told him to head up to the second floor, room 1701. So that's where Cole had been hiding. Just as Derek suspected, the place was completely empty. Most of the other players had probably stayed outside, watching the battlefield unfold from a distance. Charging in now would be risky, maybe even suicidal. Derek asked about the rest of the plan, hoping for some details, but Cole told him not to worry about the others. Instead, Cole asked him who he thought would be easier to deal with, Freddie or Emily. Derek froze when he realized he was being asked to choose which one he'd fight. Cole told him to relax. They just needed to hold out for 1 minute. While Derek kept one of them busy, Cole would focus on defending the control point. Derek's brain practically short-circuited. Cole called his name again. It was clear this was serious. He still couldn't believe they were actually going through with this. The two finally reached the spot and captured the control point. If they let anyone else step into the zone, or if they left it themselves, the control timer would instantly reset to 0. 1 minute remained until the challenge was over. Cole smiled. It was time to begin. His team had secured the control point, the first step in their plan. Emily was furious. Apparently just sniping from cover wasn't enough for him anymore. Now he wanted the spotlight too. Freddie guessed there might be hidden caches on the map, but that didn't seem likely. Charging straight toward the control point unprepared would be suicide. They might as well hand over the win and get eliminated. Back in the survival game, there had been a powerful artifact hidden in the zone. If it weren't for that, they would have won. Last time, Cole's flawless mobility and evasive skills were what saved him. But the limited space of the control point would restrict his movement. Maybe he didn't plan to hold it at all. Maybe his goal was to draw everyone's attention, then vanish halfway through the fight. Emily told Freddie to focus. They finally understood Cole's approach. He wasn't about brute force. And in a closed area, mobility wouldn't help him much. He'd probably try to take advantage of the chaos. The kind that would erupt once the other players started clashing over the control point. Emily and Freddie decided not to fight for the territory directly. Still, they had to ruin Cole's plan before the chaos began. But then, a system alert popped up. A team had been wiped out. Several players had entered the building, and none of them survived. If Cole really wanted to use the chaos to his advantage, he would have just escaped and stalled for time until more hunters arrived. Freddie realized they had a problem. Only 20 seconds left on the clock. Derek knew they'd fight until they dropped. He wasn't sure if their plan would even work. Whenever an opponent entered the room, they immediately came under Cole's aim. If he missed, or the target dodged, Derek would step in. The boy could only hope it'd all turn out fine. Just then, a player burst through the door, demanding a fair fight. Cole responded with a single shot, another one down. The next challenger blasted through a wall and hid behind the rubble. Bullets couldn't penetrate that. No problem. That's what Derek was for. He gripped his sword and charged forward. But the opponent wasn't alone. A girl lurked behind, ready to strike. Using all-seeing eye, Cole calculated the perfect angle of attack. Another team was wiped out in seconds. Half the time was already gone. 32 seconds remained. If they kept this pace, they'd complete the mission easily. But that wasn't Cole's goal. He wanted total domination. While he was distracted, Emily and Freddie finally reached the building. Before Cole could even fire, they were already within striking distance. Then everything around them started collapsing. The entire structure was coming down. Emily told Freddie they were out of time. They had to act, and fast. In those final seconds, Cole fired several more shots, eliminating 3 more players. Emily was at a loss. She couldn't even tell where his shots were coming from. The cloud of dust made it impossible to see. No matter how good Cole was, there was no way he could take on that many players alone. It felt just like the old days. Back then, his team had faced similar desperation. They were 1 step away from dropping to 9th place on the leaderboard. Something had to be done. 4 of his teammates had fallen into an ambush set by the enemy. Not a single opponent had been taken out yet. Cole's team was being annihilated, but somehow he escaped. He had to win. Dropping to 9th wasn't an option. Just like now, he'd brought down an entire building back then too. The audience thought they were witnessing a suicide attempt, that Cole had given up. But it was just another twist. There was no way he'd surrender that easily. The building was seconds from collapse. Dust filled the air, visibility was 0. But even then, Cole's aim stayed deadly precise. He'd taken down 3 enemies at once. Each team had only 1 member left. The crowd was on edge, waiting to witness a legendary heptakill. No one in the league's history had ever pulled off such a feat. But there was a problem. Cole's mana had run out. Unfortunately, there would be no miracle that day. The hero fell to his opponent's blade, and his team dropped to 9th place. Just 1 small step had separated them from victory. And that same step had led him to this moment. But now, things were different. This time, Cole had more mana than he could ever need. There would be no repeat of that failure. The task had been to fight for control of the point, but Cole hadn't just captured it. He'd annihilated the entire field. Even Linda had to admit it. The kid fought like a real pro. Michael pointed out that Cole's mastery of his weapon was exceptional. Such precision was impossible without an advanced marksmanship skill. He had noticed it back at the qualifiers. There was undeniable potential here. Bill agreed but couldn't help wondering, how had Cole managed to see through that massive cloud of dust? It took rare instincts, or perhaps something more, to choose such an unconventional weapon at such a young age. Michael suspected that Cole possessed a unique ability, something that enhanced his accuracy beyond human limits. That same ability likely gave him absolute confidence in any situation, and that explained everything. The community was losing its mind. It was no surprise that this episode had exploded in popularity. After all, Cole had single-handedly defeated every opponent, something almost unheard of. Still, it wasn't as miraculous as it seemed. He'd simply reused a proven strategy. If the battle had been fought face-to-face, the outcome might have been far less spectacular. A notification appeared. Cole had earned a special achievement. His flourishing rank had risen, and a new talent unlocked, Legendary Sniper. Derek wondered if Cole had been hiding this power all along. He even asked to touch his gun, just once. Cole had never mentioned how vast his mana reserves were, and Derek couldn't help but wonder how he'd managed to locate every opponent in such a thick haze. Cole claimed it was instinct. Derek laughed. So that's how the hero treated his only friend, so cold and dismissive. Wait, did he just call himself Cole's only friend? Cole had never thought of it that way. But in truth, there really wasn't anyone else around who could fill that role, except Derek. Was his circle really that small now? The judges stepped onto the stage. Linda addressed the crowd, explaining that not everyone was meant to become a hunter. That talent often decided everything. It was a harsh truth, but the show sought only the most gifted and capable, hunters destined to reach heights beyond imagination. Though that too came with its own cruelty. For those who failed to advance, there was still a chance to rise again someday. As for those who succeeded, perhaps it was time to celebrate. But they shouldn't forget that this was only the beginning of their journey. Linda welcomed them to the Hunters League. The judges had swiftly selected the best of the best. In such a short time, they had already chosen the standouts. All that remained was the final evaluation, the ultimate test. As always, it would follow the league's traditional format, 7-on-7 team combat. Teams had to be formed by the end of the day. The match would take place in a week, crowning a champion and 2 runners-up. This particular match, however, would feature an unusually special guest. As Cole, finding a team that matched his expectations would be ideal. So, he suggested moving the conversation somewhere more suitable. The first to speak was William, head coach of the Seoul Academy team. They could guarantee his debut in Division 2 and eventually Division 1. Their offer included a student exchange program and a personal coach for international tournament preparation. Cole interrupted. He wasn't the only one here after all. He asked them to keep it brief and highlight what made their offer unique. William proposed a signing bonus of 100 million won and an annual salary of 200 million. Another recruiter countered with a 300 million signing bonus and a stable yearly income. 300 million up front. A tempting deal, no doubt. Still, Cole preferred to choose his own teammates. Or perhaps he wouldn't join any team at all. A third representative offered the same conditions and remained open to further negotiation. In that case, Cole made it clear he wanted full control over team selection. The recruiters fell silent. It was obvious they wouldn't agree to his terms. The meeting was over for today. The men left their business cards behind, promising to discuss the terms and possibly raise the signing bonus with their superiors. To most rookies, such offers would have seemed generous and awe-inspiring. But then Cole noticed one man who hadn't left. Maybe he still had something to say. His name was Yusuf, a recruiter for PER, a team Cole had never heard of. The man thought they might be willing to meet his demands. Yusuf handed him a card. The name didn't ring a bell. If PER had been in Division 1 or even Division 2, Cole would have known them for sure, which meant they must be a third division team, and not exactly a famous one. Their budget was limited, but Yusuf promised something far more valuable: full control over roster formation. Several of their current players had contracts expiring next season, and no one knew who'd be staying. Given the timing, Yusuf said they could easily factor Cole's opinion into the new lineup. Clearly there wouldn't be a huge payday, but creative freedom was on the table. Cole had questions. Would his lineup consist only of rookies? Yusuf suggested meeting the team director to discuss those details in person. He looked desperate enough to agree to anything, just to recruit him. The man urged Cole to think it over carefully and, if possible, schedule a meeting with the director soon. So, here were the options. Join one of the top third division teams, with a huge signing bonus and permission to choose maybe 1 or 2 teammates, or join PR, not exactly a powerhouse, but a place where he could build his own squad from scratch. It all came down to what he wanted. Derek, of course, was dying to know which team Cole would choose. He'd been waiting outside. The recruiter's offers didn't interest him. He was staying with the Seoul Academy no matter what. So he waited, curious about the details of Cole's negotiations. The offers had all hovered around 300 million won plus a solid annual salary. Nothing new, really. Derek's jaw dropped. Clearly, his own academy paycheck wasn't nearly that high, which was odd given its prestige. After all, Seoul Academy's training was among the best in the entire league system. He still didn't know which team Cole would pick, though Cole himself wasn't sure yet. Derek couldn't see what there was to hesitate about. In his mind, it was a no-brainer. Cole explained that he wanted to handpick his teammates. Maybe his ambitions were just too big. Derek agreed that Cole was talented, but reminded him that they were still rookies, far from having the power to set terms. Maybe he was right, but ambition only looked too big until it was backed by results. If Cole could prove his worth, show them that he was the one they needed, they wouldn't dare refuse. He agreed with Derek, yet that didn't mean he'd accept any deal without negotiation. If his reputation wasn't high enough yet, then all he had to do was grind harder and make his name echo across the league. Recruiters had approached Freddie too. The offer he'd received was likely the best he'd ever get. But anxious and uncertain, he decided to remain with Seoul Academy. They'd even offered to increase his signing bonus if he broke his current contract. Then Emily messaged him. She knew it. Talking to recruiters was a waste of time. Better not even start the conversation. Freddie couldn't help but wonder where Cole was headed. After all, the guy was practically the top sniper in the entire Korean Hunters League. That last match had been brutal, but Cole hadn't missed a single shot. Soon, he'd join a new team, and when the time came, Freddie would meet him again on the 3rd Division arena. Maybe not just there. And when that day came, the real fun would begin. Derek was puzzled. Why was Cole heading to a workshop? Nothing of his seemed broken. But Cole knew better. With the official Hunters League match approaching, proper gear was a must. Derek had assumed air step and anchor tech would be enough. Clearly, he'd never seen how the pros fought. Equipment could change the entire course of a battle, sometimes more than skill itself. The world of mana-activated devices was vast, countless forms, endless functions. The two were greeted by a young woman working at the shop. She instantly realized they were first-timers. She figured they'd come to repair a gadget or fix a weapon. Before they could say anything, she suggested showing them the latest line of Manatech devices. The moment Derek stepped inside, he was stunned. This place. It was nothing short of a hunter's paradise. The attendant offered to explain how to choose the right mana device. That would come in handy. Cole mentioned that some fool had tagged along, someone who clearly had no clue about this kind of gear. In truth, the world now boasted a dazzling variety of inventions, much like the air anchor or the air step. All mana devices generally fell into 3 main categories: offensive, defensive, and mobility-based. The so-called 4th category didn't really exist. It was simply a label for devices that didn't fit anywhere else. Those were often custom-made, each with its own unique traits and functions. Usually, hunters ordered custom equipment to fit a specific strategy or to counter a particular type of opponent. The attendant presented a basic model, a mana stone that formed a protective barrier around its user. It looked easy to use, though Derek was puzzled that he'd never actually seen anyone wield one before. He was sharp to notice. The issue was simple. Once the shield broke, the device needed time to recharge. For that reason, it was typically reserved for emergencies only. Most range fighters used it to block deadly surprise attacks during crucial moments of a match. Choosing equipment always depended on one's strategy and battlefield role. The right setup could completely transform a player's performance in the arena. Cole tested a device called the Mana Detonator, asking Derek what kind of player he thought it suited. It seemed like something that needed to be attached to an object, maybe perfect for ranged combatants. Nonsense. At least, not with Cole's pistols. The bullets were far too small to attach anything. Then again, no, wait. Cole didn't fire regular bullets. He fired ether, something that could take any form. It allowed them to keep their distance, or close it in an instant. Cole grabbed the device and, with a grin, pressed his gun to Derek's head. A perfect fit. With this, he could instantly switch from range to close-quarters combat. Derek suggested buying everything, only to remember that mana wasn't infinite, and there was a limit to how many devices one could equip. One air dash would be more than enough for Cole. For now, it was more important to help Derek decide. The guy had no idea what to pick. The options were overwhelming. Since he didn't fight from range, a mana shield was pointless. The detonator wouldn't help either, and air dash seemed far too advanced to master right away. So, Cole pulled something else from the shelf, something that made Derek stare in disbelief, thinking it had to be a joke. Soon, everyone gathered at the stadium again. Linda announced that the final match would take place in 6 days. It was time to reveal the team lineups and unveil the battlefield map. The final arena featured dense forest and towering mountain ranges. The match would unfold on the legendary Field of the Gods, a world modeled after the Great Tower itself. Based on the previous matches, the judges split the players into two balanced teams. The blue team, Emily, Sean, and Dustin. The red team, Cole, Freddie, Derek, and Liam. Since the rosters were announced in advance, the judges hoped to see genuine teamwork by the day of the match. A united front in just 1 week. Michael said this game would be truly special because Adam Steinberg. In the match, he would take on the role of a neutral monster. He held high hopes for the participants, joining the event to share his invaluable experience firsthand. Adam urged them to savor the final, promising they would meet again in a week. It was time for new stars to rise. After the shoot ended, Cole caught up to the chairman. He handed back a business card, the one recruiter Yusuf had given him, and mentioned that he'd been advised to meet the team's owner. The team, PER, had languished at the bottom of Division 3 for years. Honestly, Cole had barely even heard of them. But after talking with the recruiters, a memory from his previous life surfaced. The shocking revelation that the true owner of PR was none other than Adam himself. Back then, that news had shaken the entire league. The chairman fixed him with a sharp, unreadable gaze. Officially, the media had always reported a different story. Per had a figurehead owner, a public mask. How had Cole seen through it? Nothing escaped his eyes. A bold realization, the mark of a hero who saw straight through people's facades. Cole knew everything about Adam, every secret, every shadow. And now, the question hung in the air. What would the great chairman do about it? Adam didn't see that coming. Cole had a skill sharp enough to pierce through facades. Hiding the truth was straight up pointless. So Adam stepped up, laying it all out. He was the boss of PR and the head honcho of the Hunter Association. He figured all the hustle with Yusuf was wasted, but Cole had other ideas. He'd just flipped the script. Cole was down to join the team, but only under one insane condition. Per had to be handed over under his control. Later, Adam filled Yusuf in on the situation. Yeah, things were getting wild to say the least. Still, deep down, Cole worried he might stir trouble. Not everyone's sure he was exactly what they needed. Never in Adam's wildest thoughts had he expected someone to demand partial ownership as the cost of joining. Cole was the top sniper in Korea. Sure, he could push a bit, but he was definitely pushing his luck here. The kid had nailed the entry test, no doubt, but calling him a pro? That was a stretch. Cole was dead set on winning the final match, not just against the players. He had his sights on Adam himself. Yusuf's jaw dropped at the audacity, while Adam found it oddly entertaining. If Cole could pull it off, the tables would turn. Adam wouldn't hire him. Cole would be calling the shots. Yusuf couldn't even wrap his head around it. Could a kid really pull that off? But the real kicker? Cole threw down a bombshell when Adam agreed to the wager. Victory would mean Cole ran the show, not Adam. Yusuf froze. Adam smirked. It was bold, and if Cole pulled it off, he'd be right. Of course, Adam wasn't about to fold without testing the cards Cole had up his sleeve. Meanwhile, Cole had rallied the crew. Everyone was cool with him taking the lead. Cole had half expected Freddie to throw in some challenge. But that fiery glare he caught from Freddie, it made him tense. The plan leaned on their strengths, knowing that mastering the Field of the Gods came first. Only after rising above the terrain could the team dive into coordinated strikes. But with a new variable, Adam, the strategy had to shift. Some of them would have to tweak their game plan, including Cole. Everyone but Cole, Freddy, and Derek would farm gear and hunt monsters. The trio, meanwhile, would head straight to neutral monster territory once the match started. First target? Adam himself. Cole was dead set on outplaying the boss. The guys were shook. Liam straight up called him crazy. How could three guys take down the chairman? Adam promised he wouldn't go all out, but still, Liam remembered Cole's flawless performance in the elimination round, how he owned the survival game. But did Cole really see himself as Korea's best hunter? Liam doubted it. Freddy chimed in, reminding everyone just how strong Adam really was, Cole included. Naturally, Cole had a plan for that. Freddy wasn't worried. He knew the kid had it all mapped out. Freddy's confidence in Cole was weirdly protective, almost like the kid had a death wish that Freddy was keeping in check. Cole wasn't charging in blindly. His approach might look wild, but it had method. Judges gathered to drop a quick recap for viewers on the finals rules. 2 teams, 7 players each, and the map would decide everything. Every game split into phases. First up, the farming phase, collecting gear and hunting monsters. Next, the mission phase, where hunters capture neutral monsters or secure their territory. Finally, the teamfight phase. 7-on-7 battles erupt. Missions shift with the map's quirks. Predicting outcomes is near impossible. But this final? It was on a whole other level because Adam would step in. Everyone knew the basics, but what exactly would the chairman do on the battlefield? This time he'd act as a neutral monster, behaving like any other beast. Still, Adam was a pro, a brutal opponent for the competitors. Judges applied handicaps. All his stats were reduced by 2. That way, his edge wouldn't be overwhelming. Even tiny differences matter. And he'd face 14 players at once. Watching that unfold was going to be insane. Michael's been backing Cole through every round of the show, so at this point, he's basically the dude's #1 fan. Linda's not arguing this time, but Michael's got a hunch the winner might be someone else. He wonders why the chairman suddenly decided to pick neutral ground. Linda figures he just wants to meet every contestant in person and crown the champion himself. Exactly. If that's true, then Cole won't get another chance to shine with his usual tricks. His strengths, agility, and deadly accuracy. But against the chairman, those skills won't save him. Adam's a close combat beast, packing insane power and an unreal sense for chasing down his prey. Long-range fighters don't stand a chance. Still, Linda reminds everyone that Adam will have certain limits this time. Michael thinks it's not about strength or restrictions. The chairman simply doesn't hold back. Bill says the Hunter League's all about the unexpected. Anything can happen in that ring. He agrees with Michael, but adds that it's better not to jump to conclusions. After all, the final battleground is none other than the Field of the Gods. Seconds tick down before the finale begins. Comments are flooding in by the thousands. For the first time ever, the chairman's gonna flex his skills live on stream. Luckily, the arena looks exactly the way Cole remembers it. That means they can stick to the plan. The finals rules are standard. The match keeps going until one team's completely wiped out. Back in the day, dungeons, also known as towers, used to spawn all over the world in total chaos. That led to endless conflicts among hunters until they came up with a somewhat peaceful fix. Inside those towers were powerful artifacts, and no one wanted to share their loot. To claim those treasures, hunters had to fight not only monsters, but each other. That's how the Hunter League was born, and most arenas are modeled after those ancient towers. Naturally, first-generation hunters have the upper hand. They know the maps better than anyone else. All contestants have loaded into the map. Cole's team sticks to the plan. Freddy and Derek are with him. No turning back now. Team B, led by Emily, is clearing out the area. Looks like they're grinding monsters to power up before facing the chairman. Their next move's probably a direct clash with him. That's a pretty standard and effective strategy under these conditions. Even though the chairman's stats are reduced by 2 levels, he still outclasses all the rookies. Team A seems to be doing things differently. Only 4 of them are hunting monsters. Meanwhile, Linda thinks they're doomed. They're way weaker than Adam and there's only 3 of them. Michael agrees, but decides to wait and see what they've got planned. The chairman stands firm at his spot. Someone's already heading his way. He's curious what these guys are up to. Maybe they think he won't notice them. For now, they're hiding. Then suddenly, bullets rain down on Adam. But a guy like him? That's not enough to shake him. He's unimpressed. Like, is that really all Cole's got? While Adam's distracted, Derek and Freddy strike from behind. Too slow. The chairman blocks every hit. Still, he finds Cole intriguing, like there's real potential there. But if that's all they can do, it's disappointing. He expected Cole to pull something spectacular. All Adam sees are desperate sword swings, until a massive figure looms above him. The Field of the Gods, once home to an ancient civilization of giants. But for some mysterious reason, they all turn to stone. What's wild is, even as statues, those giants never truly died. Back in the day, Cole studied this place well, since the Hunter League finals are usually held right here. That's when he discovered a secret: how to awaken a giant. The plan is to bring one of those stone titans back to life. Freddy suspects there's a hidden artifact inside, just like in survival games. Cole senses something, cracks in the stone. If they hit the right spots, the statue will crumble and awaken, and the giant sealed inside him starts to awaken, ready to break free. Derek's not sure if that's real or just wild guessing. But Freddy's convinced our guys got some kind of secret skill up his sleeve. Let's say they really do unleash those giants. But will they even help? Nah, they've been locked away for way too long. Chances are they've lost their minds completely and will go berserk on anyone in sight. Derek's not totally sold on this plan. He gets the idea, but what if the giants mistake Adam for one of their own and just don't attack? If Cole's logic is right, that shouldn't happen. Still, the squad might end up in serious danger. That's why they prepped those mana devices. Now it clicks for Derek. This might actually work. So that's the deal. Cole wasn't trying to fight head-on. He was pulling off a diversion. His real targets were the statues. But is that even possible? Somehow he knew they could come alive. Or maybe that was the plan all along. Cole himself triggered their awakening. But how? The giants start attacking Adam. The chairman can handle it. He's more worried about something else. But not perfect. You can't stay hidden under those things forever. That's why most hunters don't even bother using them. The chairman thinks they're not even planning to fight, but then Cole fires a shot. And damn, he actually cornered Adam. It's been ages since the chairman faced something like this. Gotta admit, he's impressed. He even gives Cole props for pulling that off. But he better not think it's over yet. They're on equal ground now. Time for Cole to show what he's really made of. The stadium's in total shock. The judges can't figure out why the dude keeps shooting at the statues. But Cole knew exactly how to wake them up. The chairman dodges the team's attacks, but those bullets he avoided end up slamming straight into the giants. Things aren't looking good for him. Cole only pretended to shoot at Adam. His real aim was the cracks in the statues. Then he cloaked himself, letting the raging giant turn its focus on the chairman. Michael can't believe it. Cole actually pulled it off. Outsmarting a first-generation hunter? That's no joke. Looks like our hero's gonna have to push even harder to win this one. Cole tries shooting at the giant again, but Adam deflects the bullet midair. The chairman's not falling for the same trick twice. He's waiting to see what Cole comes up with next. The all-seeing eye marks weak spots on Adam's shield. Cole fires again, even though it shouldn't work this time. That's the trick. The bullets collide midair, ricochet. They bounce off each other and hit the giant dead on. Even a first-gen hunter's gonna struggle with 2 giants at once. But Adam's not backing down. Cole contacts Derek and Freddy. The guys are hiding in the bushes near the monsters. Liam and the others are on their way. They've got a special plan. Liam's crew has been mowing down tons of monsters. He's not sure what exactly Cole wants from them, but he's the only one in that squad Cole truly trusts. Before the finals, Cole gave them specific instructions. First, they're to take out monsters carefully, no casualties, and collect enhancement items. Second, they must avoid the blue team at all costs. And third, no fights under any circumstances. Even if they run straight into their rivals, they stick to the plan. Cole even gave them an escape route. Emily and her crew arrive, looking for enemies. Just like Cole predicted, Emily swears she won't lose this time. Liam calls his teammates. They start running. Now that Team B's on their tail, they have to keep some distance. Liam's not sure if they can really pull it off. But they can't let Cole down. He tells everyone to head straight for the marked zone. When Emily's team catches up, they realize it's the neutral monster zone. She screams as the giant roars to life. Liam has no clue what the hell is happening. Cole said he'd deal with the chairman first, but now everything's turning into pure chaos. The hero told Liam to stall for time. The guy agreed, but not for long. Cole needed just 3 minutes. Liam would see everything soon enough. For now, he just had to keep throwing rocks. Cole told Freddie and Derek it was time to move before anyone noticed them. On his signal, it was time to take Emily's team out of the game. Derek and Freddie dropped their cloaks and ambushed Team B one down. Emily ordered her squad to stay clear of the giants and watch out for the flying debris. The real fight was just beginning, and they had to focus on the red team. Meanwhile, Emily summoned a healing sphere. They hit the wrong target. While she wasn't looking, Cole fired a shot. But Emily wasn't some rookie. Her protective ring deflected the bullet. Cole might have really thought she wouldn't come prepared. Looks like he underestimated her for real. Time for Plan B. The hero pulled out his mana detonator. First, he detached a piece. Now came the ether. Cole used it to reshape the weapon. The gun got heavier in his hands, but the shot that followed was devastatingly powerful. Another one down. Even Emily's shield barrier couldn't withstand it. From a distance, Liam could see how insane that looked. Even Cole couldn't believe it worked. Thanks to her sanctuary buff, Emily's wounds began closing fast, but she was still at risk of being eliminated by these guys. In the Hunter League, there were 2 ways to ascend. The first one was obvious: kill the dungeon monsters that spawned on the map. The second option: take out your rivals. Emily was down. Her team was seconds away from being wiped out. And Adam looked like he'd just finished his own fight. It had been a long time since he'd gone all out like that. Felt good. Now he wanted to pick up where they left off. He was curious what Cole had to say. But Cole didn't think there was anything left to discuss. The chairman told him not to hide anymore. Still, he genuinely admired Cole's strategy. The new generation relied too much on brute strength. Back in the day, hunters had to protect towers too. Strategy used to mean survival. A solid plan was the key to victory. At that moment, Adam hurled his axe straight at Cole. Somehow, he tracked his position just by voice. Cole launched himself away with the air anchor. The giant fight must have worn Adam down. Maybe the team could finally take him. But when Derek charged, Adam cut him down with a single swing while deflecting bullets at the same time. No surprise there. A top-tier hunter would crush 3rd Division players with ease. Still, they gave it everything they had. Liam went down too. Now it was just Cole and Freddie left. Adam figured the hero would be shocked, but he wasn't. Cole had expected that kind of skill from the chairman. The man hoped Cole had some kind of backup plan. Cole yelled, and Freddie hurled daggers at the chairman. But it was pointless. Adam leapt forward and pierced the guy with his spear in an instant. Now only Cole remained. The chairman wasn't just a close combat fighter, he was a tank. The ultimate nightmare for any ranged fighter. Cole was in a terrible spot. Adam charged, claiming victory was his, already ready to strike the final blow. But the hero wasn't so sure. He pulled out the mana detonator again. A massive explosion erupted, shaking the whole stadium. The crowd and judges held their breath. Both Cole and Adam lay exhausted on the ground. Looked like the hero actually pulled it off. He'd used the mana detonator to end the match in a draw. Turns out, the real monster in that arena was him. Cole exhaled in relief and climbed onto the stage. But inside, he was completely disappointed. If only he had dodged the chairman's spear and thrown the detonator in time, he would have won. Derek hugged him, telling him not to sulk. Victory should feel good, but what's there to celebrate? Cole had ended in a draw. Freddie was surprised that the hero didn't seem to realize it. Cole just shrugged it off, saying it didn't matter. The winners, including Adam, ascended the stage. The chairman stared at Cole with a strange, piercing gaze. The judges began their speech. Every year, around 100,000 people awaken worldwide, each dreaming at least once of becoming a hunter. But it's no simple feat. A true hunter must possess courage, wisdom, strength, and of course, a dash of luck. In short, not every player is cut out to be a real hunter. Yet today, one participant proved he was worthy of the title, and the winner of Hunters. The next generation is Cole Phillips. He delivered the best performance of all. Funny thing, he'd held trophies like this countless times in his past life. But damn, this was the first time in ages he genuinely felt happy. And after the award ceremony, his mom, who had opposed his path as a hunter, suddenly changed her mind. All his relatives were watching the show too, and they were thrilled. His dad worried the most, even if he'd never admit it. In the past, Cole had played for lower league teams, obviously under rough conditions. That's why his parents had worried so much. But this time, everything was different. Only one small matter remained, sorting out the team issue. So Cole approached the chairman, Adam. The man asked what brought him here. That crafty old guy. Cole had won, and now he was here to claim his team. But Adam thought that wasn't entirely fair. The hero had only won thanks to the giant's attack, and the duel had ended in a draw. Cole just said he'd bow out and leave. Adam grabbed his hand, stopping him, saying he was only joking. No need to get worked up. They were partners now. Looks like the chairman was giving Cole PR. He was genuinely impressed by the guy's skills. Our hero extended his hand, eager to work together. The chairman shook it, saying the feeling was mutual. Morris, a world-famous weapons manufacturer, crafting gear for hunters and conducting comprehensive evaluations. Today, Cole was here to claim his prize and place an order. Derek was here too, soon to compete in the 3rd Division League. Why not order some gear for himself? For reasons unknown, Michael would accompany him. Derek asked about the difference between custom-made and standard weapons. Michael asked to be called by name. They weren't on a show. Of course, the difference was significant. Custom gear was made for a specific person, tailored to their unique combat style. They entered the Morris workshop, immediately greeted by a female consultant, prepped for their visit. The workshop they needed was in Section B3. Morris had 4 sections in total. Each was labeled alphabetically from A to D, and the quality of weapons reflected the section's letter. Section B wasn't bad at all. Derek gasped. He'd never had a chance to visit such a workshop. It was breathtaking. He asked how much morass weapons cost. He figured custom gear would be far pricier than standard equipment. Michael suggested coming back to that later, for now explaining the key details. Before ordering, they had to pick one of the base models. For example, he showed one for his 7-branch sword. Any weapon's base started from a standard sample. Then it was modified to match the user's abilities and fighting style. Michael, choosing his weapon, had made a sketch showing roughly what he needed. He drew a normal sword with 6 offshoots. A 7-curved branch sword would widen the wound when withdrawn, increasing damage dealt. And the Morris workshop created that insane sword from just one rough sketch. Michael's sketch was just a rough idea to show the desired weapon. The master's job was to turn the client's imagination into a finished weapon. But first, you needed to know what type of weapon fit best. and exactly how it would be used. Derek pondered that. Cole would stick with the gear he'd fought with in his past life. But what Derek would come up with, now that was intriguing. He looked through everything and reached for a rapier, a weapon designed for piercing strikes. The guy wanted to boost speed using mana, and make the rapier glow when the speed boost technique was activated. Michael laughed, reminding him not to forget the cool factor. Derek was thinking like a pro-level player. Then he asked if Cole had chosen his weapon yet. Among Korean hunters, no one used firearms, so the model he needed wasn't on display. But now he could once again use magical weapon transformation. He grabbed a seemingly ordinary piece and asked them to take it. Michael nodded, telling him to use his privilege to the fullest. In just a few moments, that plain block transformed into an awesome firearm. The staff was stunned. He'd done it so quickly and effortlessly. People were always impressed by Cole's skills, but he could never get used to the reactions. And naturally, competition was inevitable. Branches constantly vied for supremacy. They cared mostly about two things: the quality of weapons and the prestige of their clients. At the moment, the Korean branch didn't have a great reputation. Korean players' performances on the world stage were a disaster. They didn't promote Korean-made gear, just ruin Moras's image. But Cole could help restore the branch's reputation. He had not only won the show, but also demonstrated the ability to create entirely new weapons. Chloe Parker, head of the Sol Morris branch, wouldn't let this opportunity slip by. She thanked Cole for his attention and suggested getting straight to work. First, Chloe asked if the B-rank gear suited him. Well, it was the prize prepared by the organizers, so there wasn't really a choice. Chloe said if all he needed to create his weapon was a mana ingot, then they could provide something truly special. She pulled out and opened a small case. Cole would be free to use the mana ingot provided by the branch to create his own weapons. In return, she asked for collaboration and occasional help developing new gear using his skills. Simple and mutually beneficial. It sounded amazing. But what would the workshop do when everyone learned that Cole was making his own weapons? He had figured out her plan. If he used their mana ingot, they could convince the public that the branch's masters had mastered processing top-quality mana ingots. Then Chloe could request more gear to be made, building a full collection of high-end weapons for the branch. Chloe forgot to mention one thing. They'd have to ask Cole to sign a non-disclosure agreement. In that case, Cole probably just needed to show his skills at the main branch first. Chloe got annoyed and asked what he intended to achieve. Much better, the hero replied, sponsorship. The woman was surprised. She thought it was enough that the branch provided him with free weapons. But they could make an exception. The branch would provide the necessary financial support. However, Cole wasn't asking for himself. The support was for Per, the team he was joining. In other words, he demanded sponsorship for a third division team that had been failing every season. Chloe asked why PR. If he looked at another team, they'd gladly finance them. But Cole said he'd already signed a contract with them. Chloe froze. She said they'd prefer to sponsor someone who would promote the brand and strengthen the company's image, and PR wouldn't do that. Cole understood, but the deal's terms seemed fair enough to him. He'd be lending his skills to craft weapons exclusively for the Korean Morris branch. That's when all the details would be hammered out. Chloe and Cole shook hands. Cole stepped into the stadium. The crowd was exactly what he expected for a third division match. Per versus ESP. Bottom ranked clashing with the ninth spot, totally doable. PR had been having a rough streak lately, but there was still a shot to turn things around. This time, the team could realistically outplay their rivals. Matches for the second and third divisions happened in virtual reality. But top league battles took place in real dungeon zones, so the risk of injury on the field shot way up. Still, second and third division hunters had nothing to fear, so why all the panic? Cole was stunned. This wasn't even a real battle. He'd come hoping to find hidden talent in this team. But a tragic outcome. At this rate, PER would finish the season without a single win. Cole was in shock. They hadn't won once. Had he made a mistake? Maybe he should have scouted another team. It would have made more sense to join a team with real prospects and talented players. That way, later, it'd be easier to move up to a first division team. Nope, Cole wasn't backing down. He'd find a solution. First, he needed to deal with the current players. Kick out everyone he could. He just hoped at least one good hunter was hidden among them. He was even more shocked when he discovered PR's headquarters was in a residential building. Though, thinking back, his first team had no sponsors either, so they'd also lived in a regular apartment. Okay, maybe it wasn't as bad as it seemed at first glance. Stepping inside, Cole heard shouting. The guys were fighting over their loss, accusing each other of cowardice, while Yusuf tried to calm them down. The coach urged them to stay cool and discuss things rationally. Yusuf spotted Cole and introduced him as the new team member, the winner of the show. Cole said he'd watched their play, and he had to admit, he was blown away by how utterly useless they were on the field. One guy, since Cole had bruised his ego, he challenged the guy to a duel. If he lost, he'd leave the team. But if he won, that guy would be the one to go. Cole had just walked in and provoked them, but only 3 took the bait. The rest were too chicken. Everyone gathered in the battle hall. Looks like they were all on the same wavelength. Cole hoped they wouldn't just shut off the sensors, claiming they'd crush him. He suggested they crank it up to the max. That guy, Scott, told Cole to get ready, or it was game over. Scott had rushed solo before and gotten wiped out in the match. His skill was a destructive dash, unleashing a shockwave as he charged. Scott's stats were weaker than anyone from the show. He clearly slacked off in training. The skill was solid, he just didn't know how to use it. It was laughable that these guys had made it pro. So, Cole and the 3 guys stepped onto the virtual battlefield. As Cole expected, Scott charged straight at him. But strangely, he ran past. Then the ground beneath him began to crumble. The skill's radius was bigger than Cole expected, a seriously impressive move. Cole dodged with an air step. Scott would think Cole was dancing to his tune, and he dashed straight at him, confident of victory. Everything went according to plan. Scott fell right into the trap. 2 of the guys arrived late. Scott was already bound. Who's next? Cole warned them. It would hurt. Obviously, the guys had lost. Cole reminded them of the deal. Whoever lost was out. Cole told them to hit the road. 2 of the guys stomped off with insults, but Scott just stood there. Cole reminded him, louder this time, that it was his turn to leave. Scott bit his lip and apologized. Wait, Cole hadn't caught that? Scott apologized again, owning up to his mistake. He fully acknowledged his faults and begged not to be kicked. He had patience. Scott couldn't beat a rookie hunter. Why should Cole let him stay? He argued his skill was decent. Cole, of course, had beaten him. But that was his biggest asset. Scott asked if that wasn't enough. He had a point. The skill was powerful. But so what? The guy couldn't even use it. And honestly, he probably wouldn't listen to Cole. Scott promised he'd follow orders if Cole let him stay. Scott confidently said he could handle it. Cole wasn't sure if that was wise. But truth be told, the team was full of dead weight and the player budget was tiny. Maybe Scott could be turned into an example for the rest. Out of 7, Cole had booted 2. Now replacements were needed. Emily had insane potential. He wanted her. But she flat out refused, even with a perfect contract. That loss still stung for her. She said no way she'd step in. Suddenly, Cole got a new message. From none other than Freddie. Emily had told him Cole was recruiting players. Freddie was a star player at the private Seoul Academy. Cole thought he was glued there for life. He probably couldn't believe what Cole had pulled off. Freddie, good gameplay pays off. If Cole recruited him, that was a slam dunk. Then another message popped up, and from someone he definitely didn't expect. Cole didn't know how to handle it all. The most important thing when building a team was skill synergy, a total void in this squad. Their stats barely scraped the minimum, and the synergy was far from ideal. A girl named Stella had a skill called positional caution. This could actually work. Freddie was more than capable, as were the two who messaged Cole yesterday. At this rate, they could steamroll the third division. Adam was surprised that Cole thought so highly of the new team. Cole said each of them was exceptional, thanks entirely to the chairman. Adam apologized. He hadn't had time to manage the team. He noticed Cole was busy recruiting. The chairman never imagined Cole would snag a sponsor like the Soul Morass Workshop. Cole needed to do everything to save the team. Adam asked what kind of team he wanted. Cole had two ideas. The first, a one-player focus, like the chairman might expect. Too predictable. Adam reminded him that a team with one tactic would fail in the league. So Cole had a second idea, still in development. Adam could call it the saboteur strategy. The chairman didn't know what that meant, but trusted Cole. Mr. Steinberg suggested getting straight to business. Cole checked it. Everything looked solid. He was ready to move on. But Adam reminded him that the last match of the season had ended, and tomorrow was the third division press conference. Cole was now the team's executive director and had to attend. Naturally, he would. He had plans anyway. The studio was filled with team leaders. Total snooze fest. Not a single question after the presentations. Cole introduced himself as PER's new executive president and also as a player. LTD was at the top. They earned recognition for insane teamwork and domination in the division. Rumors were buzzing everywhere. Tons of players were set to climb into the second division next season. The league's winds were shifting. LTD's director fired back without a flinch. Even if someone jumped ship, they'd fill the gaps with players of equal firepower. They even planned to spotlight a couple of hunters with the potential to explode as rising stars. Cole narrowed his eyes, trying to recall who this coach could be. That face, hauntingly familiar. Wait a second. Director Lee. Cole had tangled with him in a past life, and it hadn't ended pretty. Lee had been both the director and coach of LTD in the first division back then. Now, fate had cast him into the third division. Brandon Lee always carried that idiot's aura, even back in the old days. There were whispers, too, about a new hunter from LHR. The host asked if he would make his debut in the third division. Lee fidgeted nervously, promising they were trying to push things forward, but no clear answer yet. So this was the team Freddie had been supposed to join. And the most shocking news? Purr. The crowd's whispers erupted. Cole Phillips had become PR's executive director. Cole confirmed it, stepping up with the aura of someone who just leveled up. Never before had such a young player joined a team as both a player and a director. Radical changes were coming, and the league could feel it in the air. PER had finished the season winless, but Cole swore the team would rise like a storm unleashed. The host leaned in, demanding at least a hint of what PER was cooking behind the scenes. First on the agenda, roster adjustments. Cole would play and coach, merging strategy and raw skill in real time. Strategies were shifting, a new sponsor was stepping in. PER was about to undergo a full-scale metamorphosis. He had been watching every division match closely, and honestly, not a single team seemed capable of holding their ground. Silence fell over the hall like a shroud. Tension crackled in the air. Brandon's face darkened with fury. Cole's warning sliced through the room. PER would crush them all, LTD included. It would be tragic beyond belief if a top-tier team fell to the lowest rank in the league. Perfect. Cole had stirred the hornet's nest, and not just at the press conference. The guys arrived at PR HQ, their first reunion since the show. The air was thick with expectation. Derek blinked. It looked like an ordinary house. Cole smirked. This is standard for small, scrappy teams. Honestly, Cole had hoped Derek would reach out. He never expected Sean to show too, but no arguments here. Some things just happen. Cole admitted it. The team was full of rookies, even worse than Freddie had imagined. Sean blurted out the truth. The only reason he joined was Cole's promise to raise his rating for future transfers. Cole told them to calm down. He wouldn't have called them without a solid plan. Yes, this team hadn't won a single match last season, but that wasn't the real problem. Change was coming, and half the roster was ready to take flight. But that wasn't the real problem. With these guys on board, the lineup was already halfway complete. The engines were roaring to life, time to strap in, because they were about to take off. The team clung to one shared hope, that this wasn't all for nothing, that Cole had some secret ace hidden up his sleeve. Meanwhile, Joseph Waltz, the manager of ESP, sat deep in thought. It wasn't like his players lacked skill. They'd just forgotten how to win. Somewhere along the way, the fire had dimmed, and Joseph couldn't stop wondering how to reignite it. Then, out of nowhere, a scrim request came in from PER. Scrims weren't official matches, but brutal sparring sessions where the score came down to pure kills, not objectives. His colleagues messaged him, reminding that the season was over and the players deserved rest. Nobody would blame ESP if they declined. But Joseph knew the only way to get back into the rhythm of victory was to start winning again. So, he called Coach Kim and told him to accept. He had a gut feeling. This one might be worth it. The ESP players were confused. Scrims after the season's end? That never happened. Something about this felt off. Still, rumors had already spread. PER's rookie manager had trashed the entire league the moment he showed up. He'd boasted about toppling LTD, but everyone knew he wouldn't even last against them. ESP was ready to give PER a brutal reality check. Yusuf glanced at Cole, asking if he was really sure about this. He barely even knew everyone's names yet. The new recruits hadn't synced up either, their teamwork still rough and raw. Cole admitted the truth. They didn't even have enough players for a full 7-on-7 scrim. Then he looked straight at the coach, his tone sharp as steel. If they stayed the same, they were doomed. Another loss, another mark of failure. The team would sink to the bottom again. Endless defeats had numbed them, turning once fierce fighters into ghosts of their former selves. But even the smallest glimmer of hope could spark a fire, and Cole would be the one to ignite it. Maybe this was his first official match, but just his presence alone would shift the entire balance of the team. He'd make them believe they weren't losers anymore, that this time they'd rise. Soon after, the hero stepped into the waiting room and found himself face to face with ESP's manager and coach. Joseph took one look at PR's new leader, manager, president, whatever the title was, and gave a curt nod of acknowledgement. His tone carried mockery, eyes glinting with disdain. It was obvious he was underestimating PR, dismissing them with that arrogant smirk. The match was about to begin. Cole turned to his team, the atmosphere heavy with anticipation. He'd be calling the shots, and the others needed to follow his lead. No hesitation, no noise, just execution. Deep down, he doubted they'd pull off perfect coordination. But they'd learn fast, or they'd fall. 5 core players and 1 newcomer, himself. Cole intended to prove that even this setup could win. Scott would lead the front, just like before. But not a single reckless move until Cole gave the word. If he didn't say move, then nobody moved. Not even if a mana bomber was charging straight at them. Stella would stay close to him. Her only mission, keep pace, no matter what. Derek asked about his role, and Cole told him to guard the rear. No one was getting close without going through him first. Derek wondered if that meant Cole didn't want him fighting. But soon, he'd understand why. The match began. The battlefield, Imperial Bridge. A narrow arena, no room for tricks or flashy plays. This was a clash of endurance, whose formation would hold out longer. That's exactly why Joseph had chosen this map. For a team supposedly built from scraps, PER's formation looked surprisingly solid. Joseph chalked it up to nerves, figuring it was just luck or adrenaline. After all, They hadn't trained since their last official match. The only reason they were holding together now was because they were standing still. Or maybe, just maybe, they actually looked that stable. The manager and the coach were about to witness how Cole handled his squad, not just leading, but commanding like a general who's already seen the battlefield in his dreams. Then, out of nowhere, they noticed something odd. The long-range ace himself stepped out of cover. Looked like he'd lost focus for a second, watching over his team instead of watching his flank. ESP couldn't let that slip by. They charged in, ready to take Cole down and end this fast. But just as a spear was about to strike, Cole dashed back. A clean escape, like he saw it coming all along. Turns out that mistake was a setup, a bait to make ESP bite first. The guy had laid a perfect trap. Joseph could barely believe it. Per actually had a strat built around their long-range player being the key piece. That wasn't luck. That was a flex. Cole unleashed a volley of shots, forcing ESP's front line to turtle up behind their shield. But they didn't even realize what kind of ammo he was firing. Mana detonators. The next second, the scoreboard lit up. 7 kills in one burst. Per just wiped the map clean. And just like that, the match was over. Per took the W. Absolute victory. Joseph was stunned. So that's why Cole had opened himself up. It all made sense now. The manager had to admit it. PR's performance was insane, beyond what anyone expected. Hearing the excitement in his team's voices, Cole felt something spark inside him. Pride, and that rare feeling of hope finally breaking through the gloom. Then Scott walked up, his voice steady but curious, wanting to understand how Cole pulled this off. What mattered most in a formation battle? Everyone knew the obvious. You hold your formation, no matter what. But Cole flipped it. How do you break theirs apart? Scott hesitated, unsure. Cole answered before he could think. You either make them fall apart on their own, or crush them head on. Simple as that. It sounded so straightforward when Cole said it, but for some reason, Scott had never thought of it that way before. That was exactly what Cole had done earlier. Baited the enemy into moving, then hit them right when their formation was shifting. That's why he'd stepped out. Not carelessness, but perfect timing. Scott probably stood there stunned, realizing how simple the truth could be, and how deadly it was when mastered. Then Freddie chimed in. The real answer, he said, is the one everyone agrees with once they hear it. The kind that just clicks. What shocked him most wasn't just the win. It was how smooth the coordination was, like the team had been practicing forever. But they hadn't. It was just because Cole kept the formation simple, clean, and effective. So yeah, with Derek and Sean joining in soon, the team's gonna hit harder than ever. The third division would be their playground. At least that's the dream. But even in the third division, no one's giving out easy wins. It's gonna be a fight every step of the way. Cole said flatly that, unfortunately, they wouldn't make it. Sure, ESP used to crush tournaments, but now they were just a washed-up ninth-place team barely holding relevance. Their current tactics might work against bottom feeders, but against the real sharks at the top, they'd crumble instantly. Besides, any move repeated too often loses its edge. Once the enemy reads your rhythm, you're done. Sean asked what they were supposed to do then. He joined only because he trusted Cole, but trust alone wouldn't cut it. And that was true. Unlike the others, Sean came because Cole had promised him something real. A shot at a better future, a stronger team, a bigger contract, more recognition down the line. Cole said they still needed match setups, tactical drafts for coming battles. Sean countered that they barely had anyone with solid abilities. So what kind of prep could they even do? Cole told him that skill wasn't the only weapon a team could use. One day, the team would remember his words. When they became legends of mana bombing, Cole wanted Freddie to train controlling multiple swords at once. Freddie froze, shocked, and Cole just smirked, as if asking whether he had a problem with the plan. Freddy explained that splitting focus between blades would wreck his precision. But Cole knew something they didn't. In his previous life, Freddy could handle at least 7 swords at once. At peak performance, he could perfectly balance 3, each moving like an extension of his will. If Cole wanted to help him grow fast, he couldn't just let the guy coast. It wasn't a meaningless demand, but if Freddy truly didn't want to, Cole wouldn't force him. Freddy had joined because he respected Cole, and that respect was paying off. With a deep sigh, Freddy realized it was inevitable anyway. He asked how many swords they were even talking about. Cole grinned and raised 7 fingers. That would be enough. Next was Sean. Cole wanted him to train pinpoint accuracy when throwing objects. The tighter his aim, the deadlier the result, though Sean didn't quite get the idea. Using his gravity skill in such a trivial way wouldn't unleash its full power. He asked for at least a hint of what Cole had planned, so he could decide if it was even worth his time. Cole figured he might as well tell him. The team would combine bombs using Sean's gravity ability, specifically mana bombs. That was Cole's secret plan. First, he'd attach the bombs to Freddy's swords. Then, using Sean's power, he'd have the bombs dropped mid-flight from the blades. Sean and Freddy together would form the team's heavy artillery. That was the brand new strategy Cole had hinted at. Their way to victory, the grenadier tactic. According to this plan, Freddy would control several swords, each loaded with mana bombs. Using Sean's gravity, the team would precisely rain destruction on their enemies. But there was still one missing piece of the puzzle. Without knowing the enemy's exact positioning, their attacks wouldn't hit where it counted. That's where she came in. Stella. With her ability to detect enemy locations with perfect precision, she would have to use that skill to constantly feed info to the rest of the team. Cole placed his hand gently on hers and told her she was the key to making it all work. Without her guidance, the others wouldn't be able to deploy the bombs effectively. He asked if he could rely on her. Stella turned away, muttering her reluctant agreement, her face slightly flushed. Whatever thoughts were running through her mind, she quickly buried them. Soon, Team PER got invited to a photo shoot for the new season's opening. But then he overheard a comment from another team's coach, saying Cole lacked the years and experience to back up his arrogance. Just another kid playing executive, while Team PER stood like a shaky house of cards waiting to collapse. The host figured Team PR might have something to say too. After all, they hadn't scored a single win last season. Maybe they'd be switching up their tactics this time. Suddenly, Cole stepped in. He admitted he was young, sure, but he fired back at Mr. Yu, saying that if PER won, the only thing the man would have left was his age. The host laughed it off, saying that the tension between the teams was exactly what made matches like this so fun to watch. Mr. Yu sure ran his mouth a lot for someone from the team sitting in 8th place, just barely above Per. Cole swore he'd make him eat his words in the very first match. Freddy asked if he was really sure about that, but strategies aren't meant to be locked away. Even if they revealed their hand, nobody could counter it anyway. But according to the plan, most of the heavy lifting would fall on Cole's shoulders. That wasn't exactly what the team needed right now. Freddy was the key to the whole strategy. Cole made sure he didn't forget it. Freddy promised he'd give it everything he had. The time had come. Both teams assembled on the grand stage. PR was ready to show what they were really made of. The lower-ranked team got to choose the battlefield. Being last in the standings, PER had the pick. They chose the simplest map, the city. Cole told Sean, Freddy, and Stella to start the plan as soon as they were in position. The rest were to take down as many enemies as possible or survive as long as they could. Stella took position on the 23rd floor of a high-rise along the eastern edge of the map, waiting in the far left office. She activated her ability and began relaying precise coordinates of enemy movements. On maps like this, her skill truly shined. Sean and Freddy had already reached theirs. Soon, the arena would be raining chaos and collapsing under explosions. Cole would pick off anyone trying to escape, and if someone slipped through, the guys would meet them head-on. Everyone was locked in, just waiting for Cole's signal to unleash the storm. Perfect. It began. Meanwhile, Mr. Yu had warned his players to stay sharp for this match. Cole might have been a small fish, but underestimating him was dangerous. Their captain, Mark, didn't think they needed any special counterplay against a rookie team like PER. They'd just play their game. Once Per revealed themselves, he'd activate his destructive shift. He planned to wipe them out before they could even react. But before he could move, the ceiling above began to quake. Freddy's daggers had already reached their mark. Mark shouted for everyone to raise their shields overhead. Last time, Cole had brought down an entire building. Mark had a hunch he'd pull the same stunt again. It looked like Cole was using ether rounds once more. If that was the case, Mark figured Cole must have already burned through a ton of mana. Then, through the window, he spotted 3 more daggers incoming. Panic set in. The team was being hit by telekinetic strikes. Mark never expected PR to start the fight from such a distance. He commanded everyone to raise their swords while he deflected Freddy's blades himself. But it was pointless. The mana bombs scattered and erupted in a massive explosion. From afar, Cole zeroed in on a figure sprinting out of the blast zone. Didn't look like he'd even need to enter the building after all. The enemies had realized they couldn't win in close combat against the Blade Storm, so they switched to ranged attacks. But with Freddy controlling every sword midair, even that wasn't going to save them. It was over. PR secured 7 points. Victory was theirs. In Division 1, manager Christopher from Team LTD couldn't believe what he'd just seen in a 3rd Division match. Cole had shaken the entire scene. Even Brandon admitted. The kid wasn't just all talk after all. Christopher remembered that Cole had once been on their recruitment list. But now, it looked like the kid had rooted himself deep in Team Per. LTD had offered him one of the best contracts in the entire scene, yet Cole hadn't even bothered to take a look. Too late to cry about it now. Christopher Scott couldn't believe what they had pulled off. Cole reminded Stella that this was only their first victory. No need to celebrate too much. They still had an interview coming up. Freddy would probably be named MVP of the match. Sure enough, he was invited to the studio to answer a few questions. The host asked what kind of preparation had turned things around for them this time. Freddy said he just did what the captain told him to, meaning Cole. He'd simply followed his orders to the letter. Their tactic blew up online with fans comparing it to a full-blown artillery strike. Freddy shouted that this was exactly how the captain had described it when he first laid it out. He said Cole's strategy worked flawlessly, and that he had massive respect for him. Throughout the entire interview, Freddy couldn't stop praising his captain. Derek joked that the way Freddy talked made Cole sound like the leader of some kind of cult. Scott agreed, said Mr. Phillips would fit that title perfectly. Cole had no idea what was going on and even turned red from embarrassment. He told them to just call him Cole, like always. Scott was older anyway, so the formality made no sense. Maybe they were just too happy that their losing streak had finally ended. This team was only getting stronger. PR would rise. Champions of the division in the making. Derek was eating his ramen when he noticed Cole gearing up to leave. Weird, since today was supposed to be a rest day. Cole said he had a meeting. He told Derek not to slack off either. Season or not, progress never sleeps. Cole left, and Derek finished his ramen before diving straight into his favorite shows. Meanwhile, Cole arrived at the Hunter League Stadium to meet with Michael. The guy had 2 tickets in hand. The gates were open. Time to head inside. The place was packed, a sea of fans filling every corner. They found their seats among the crowd. Michael figured Cole must have been to these matches before, the way he carried himself like he belonged here. And he was right. Cole had practically lived in arenas like this once. Even if he was in Division 3 now, he was still a pro. Michael was glad to see him. It was the weekend, but he'd worried Cole might have had other plans. Cole thanked him for the invite. Today's match was Korea versus Japan, and Japan usually took the win. Cole wondered if it was even worth showing up for, but Michael reminded him this was still his homeland. True, but Japan tended to dominate, even though Korea's lineup had some of the top-tier Division I talents. Cole wasn't exactly thrilled about the current state of Korea's esports scene, but facts were facts. Michael said the Korean players didn't really lack in skill or stats. He wanted Cole to see this match because one day it would be him standing on that stage. And when that day came, Michael wanted Cole to remember him. He even had a friend on Japan's national team. He offered to introduce them after the match. It was clear Michael had high hopes for Cole. The young prodigy focused on the arena, determined to study every move before him. Unfortunately, Japan won by a huge margin. Michael said it was time to meet his friend, pretending not to care about the loss. But Cole could tell the defeat stung. It was Takumi Minamino, Japan's long-range combat ace and national team star. Michael greeted his old friend with a hug. It had been years since they'd last met. Takumi said Michael should have been meeting with his own country's players instead, but Michael wanted nothing to do with them. He said that generation was already lost. His hopes lay with the next one. He introduced Cole to Takumi, one of Japan's most feared and skilled ranged fighters. Michael explained that Cole had just debuted in Korea and was a rising star with massive potential. He'd talked Takumi's ear off about Cole, so the Japanese ace had been looking forward to meeting him. The Japanese guy asked if he could test our hero's skills for himself. Michael suggested they should probably ask Cole first. Strangely, Cole didn't remember anyone named Takumi Minamino. Must be from a different generation of pros. Either way, his stats had to be stacked. Takumi's abilities included rapid fire, plus weak point scan, which doubles damage if he hits the same spot twice, and speed boost. There was no reason for Cole to turn down a fight against Japan's most famous long-range player, so he accepted without hesitation. Takumi smirked. Looked like this kid had some serious guts. Cole assured him that guts weren't the only thing he had. Meanwhile, the Korean team's head coach was losing his cool. He felt the gap in power had finally caught up to them. The national coach tried to stay optimistic, saying their progress was still huge. They were just inches away from scoring 3 kills. But the director wasn't impressed. He gave the team his best players, and that was all they could pull off? The coach sat there, crushed. Then he suddenly remembered that Christopher had been scouting the 2nd and 3rd divisions. He asked if Director Lee had found anyone from the disbanded LTD squad. He did, but they weren't actually part of LTD. One of them was Freddy. If only they could recruit him and that other kid with gravity control, they'd have the perfect aces for the team. Or maybe even Cole, the rising star of the next generation. Maybe that's exactly what the country needed right now. Someone like our hero. Still, Christopher couldn't help but think. They were all just kids from the 3rd division. Meanwhile, Cole and Takumi were gearing up for their virtual showdown. Michael didn't like the fire in Takumi's eyes. He hadn't changed one bit since their old days together on the national team. He called it a test, but everyone knew he just wanted a real brawl. Michael asked him to go easy on Cole. The kid was still just a rookie from the 3rd division after all. Takumi promised not to go all out. Cole let out a low chuckle. Michael realized these two were definitely cut from the same cloth. Soon, the Japanese sharpshooter spawned into the battlefield, Void Plaza. He wasn't sure why this map was chosen. It was a strange arena filled with wormhole mechanics that could change the flow of battle in an instant. Because of its unpredictable nature, no one ever picked it in professional league matches. Maybe Cole was trying to mess with Takumi's rhythm by choosing something this unusual. This was a rare sight. 2 long-range fighters squaring off in a one-on-one duel. Usually they stayed behind the lines, covering their teammates with precise fire. But interestingly, Cole had never lost a duel to another ranged fighter. Meaning, as long as he knew his opponent's position, he could hit him from literally anywhere. Cole fired a shot through one wormhole, and it came out right where Takumi had just appeared. Takumi noticed it instantly and used his speed boost to dodge. The bullet slammed into the wall right next to him. If he'd been even a fraction of a second slower, that shot would have nailed him. Cole realized the shot drifted slightly. The wormhole's vibrations must have thrown off the trajectory. Takumi couldn't believe Cole had pinpointed his location like that. The kid had fired with full awareness of where he'd appear, using wormholes for sniping. Not bad for a kid from the 3rd Division. Intrigued, Takumi switched gears and activated rapid fire and weak point scan. Cole quickly caught on. The guy was destroying structures from a position unreachable through wormholes. The stat gap between them was enormous. Takumi was confident he could crush Cole purely through raw numbers. Michael watched, eyes locked on the match. He never expected Cole to land the first strike. But then his focus was broken by someone stepping into the room. It was Elijah, a Korean national team player he hadn't seen in ages. Michael offered his condolences about today's match. Elijah froze for a moment when he saw Takumi from Japan's national team appear on the screen. He asked who was crazy enough to fight him. Michael explained it was a rising prodigy he'd been keeping his eye on. And the kid was holding up way better than anyone expected. Elijah was stunned. If Michael was mentoring someone, he should have already heard of him. But what really blew his mind was that this kid, this Cole, was a total rookie, just debuting in the 3rd Division. Either way, going one-on-one with Takumi, the result should have been obvious. Elijah shifted the topic, asking why Michael hadn't dropped by to see the team. Everyone had missed him. If he'd shown up before the match, it might have fired up the whole national squad. Michael stayed silent, his eyes locked on the match. Elijah stepped in front of the screen. Michael snapped, ordering him to move, saying this fight mattered more than Elijah did right now. The guy was speechless. He thought the duel with Takumi had already ended. But when he looked at the screen, his jaw dropped. Cole was standing tall over Takumi, who lay drained and defeated. Moments earlier, Takumi had torn down every wall in the arena, yet Cole still looked calm and collected. The Japanese ace thought he'd reached his peak and fired his final shot. Cole dodged effortlessly. Takumi's ambush had failed, but he still had time to recover the fight. But before he could even react, Cole unleashed a barrage of bullets. It was suppressive fire, every shot ricocheting and bending through the wormholes. There was no way Takumi could dodge that, so he raised his shield in desperation. But under the relentless storm of bullets, the shield shattered into fragments. And then came the delayed strike, the one Takumi never saw coming. That was the end. In his past life, Cole had been asked one question countless times, the question of what it really takes to become a good player. His answer had always been the same: experience. More precisely, the experience of victory. Takumi replayed the entire match, analyzing every moment. Michael burst in, demanding to know what happened. Takumi said Michael had just unleashed a monster. That's what happened. So Cole really did win through pure experience. It wasn't luck. It was skill earned through countless battles. Takumi didn't know when Cole would reach the world stage, but when that day comes, his fan base will rival Ethan's. Back at HQ, Cole reflected on the match. It had been one hell of a fight. Takumi was a long-range powerhouse, strong enough to destroy entire walls with ease. Still, Cole had never doubted his own victory, because back in the day, whenever life got rough, he'd poured everything into mastering duels. His opponent had held up well, even in defeat. Then Derek called out to Cole, asking what kind of stunt he'd pulled yesterday to get on the news. Turns out, in his latest interview, Takumi Minamino himself had praised Korea's rising star. Cole just shrugged, saying Michael had invited him to the match. Derek blinked, wondering since when they were buddies. Then it hit them. Cole really had fought Takumi yesterday. They half-joked, hoping he'd at least grabbed an autograph. But their jaws hit the floor when Cole casually said they'd had a duel. And he'd won. The room exploded with reactions. No one could believe it, though deep down it somehow made sense. On paper, Takumi had the superior stats and skills, but when it came to experience, Cole was untouchable. He'd spent so much time in the game that it would have been weird if he didn't know every detail, even the tiniest quirks of each map. Still, if his trajectory calculations had been even slightly off, things could have gone the other way. Suddenly, Freddy chimed in, saying he'd known it all along. All they had to do was trust Cole. The hero wasn't sure if Freddy's eyes had always burned that bright. Derek added that they should have at least called him to tag along. He claimed he could have swung his sword a few times and shown off. Cole told him to cut it out. Maybe Derek could have, back when he was at his peak, but right now, he didn't stand a chance. And so, Cole's all-seeing eye sharpened even further, likely because he'd pushed it to the absolute limit during the duel with Takumi. The ability to analyze enemy stats and predict trajectories had evolved to a whole new level. There couldn't be a better ability for training his team. The time for warm-ups was over. Now it was time to grind for real. Cole laid out his plan to Yusuf. Ranked matches were next on the agenda. The hero asked what the coach thought about the team's current situation. Yusuf believed they just needed to keep going. Their strategy pool was small, sure, but with one solid tactic, they could coast. No need to overcomplicate things. Cole didn't buy it. That wasn't good enough. What happens if their grenadier strategy fails? If the team can't rely on him to carry them every time, it's a guaranteed loss. If the plan collapses, they've got zero backup options. So either they refine the current one or craft something entirely new. Maybe even rebuild the team's foundation from scratch. What they needed now was personal growth from every single player. So they'd start with ranked matches. Cole gathered Derek, Freddy, and Stella. They'd already been briefed by the coach. Derek thought it'd be better to focus on teamwork instead of solo ranked grinding. But Cole insisted, individual growth always comes first. Without strong players, there can be no strong team. Everyone would play ranked matches, then review them together with Yusuf afterward. Later, when Cole arrived at the training arena, he didn't expect such a massive crowd. Maybe a big-name player had shown up. On the field stood Ben Stone, a close-range tank who would later be known across the leagues as the Knight. And facing him, Caitlin Beatles, a serial demolitions expert with a flair for explosions. Ben charged forward using acceleration, but Caitlin danced away, unleashing her raw firepower. She detonated a mana bomber skill, turning the entire field into a chain reaction of destruction. It seemed Ben's plan had been to close the gap and avoid her bombardment range. Caitlin was in a tight spot, but she triggered another blast at point-blank range and won the fight. She dominated the match, even though Ben had the higher rank. But Cole wasn't convinced that told the full story. If Ben had handled the mana bombers properly when he charged in, or found another way to close the distance, he could have easily taken the win. Ranked matches were the purest test, where class matchups and decision-making meant everything. To casual spectators, it looked like Caitlin had total control from start to finish. But in truth, she'd been dancing on a razor's edge the whole time. She stepped out of the arena and asked Cole about his division, his team, and his rank. She must have overheard his quiet analysis during the fight. Cole replied, "3rd Division, Team PER, rating 1000. Caitlin smirked and turned away. She muttered something about almost losing her temper at a rookie. If only she knew he'd once held the #1 spot in the world. Freddy's match was up next, so Cole started heading over. But he couldn't figure out why Caitlin was suddenly following him. Most hunters had a few screws loose, but she definitely had a special kind of crazy. Meanwhile, Stella was already mid-match. Just as Cole suspected, one-on-one duels weren't her strong suit. The Hunter Union's training center was filled with players from every division, and Stella was among the weaker ones, something that clearly frustrated her. She looked shocked when she noticed Cole watching. He commented that she still lacked solid archery experience. Stella had a few basic skills: positional awareness, rapid fire to boost her attack tempo, and a potential skill called binding, which immobilized a living target within a fixed zone. Cole hadn't expected it. That skill was ranked A+, a powerful asset for any long-range fighter. If she were a standard range DPS, he'd teach her to channel mana into her arrows or identify retreat paths. But her abilities made that approach impossible. He realized it'd be better for her to focus on her unique strength. She was more suited to a support role, the kind who stood behind the front line and created openings, not one who fought on it. But Stella doubted she could contribute much with just a single ability. And right now, maybe she was right. Yet once her binding skill evolved, she'd be able to immobilize enemies even outside her line of sight. All that was left was to unlock its full potential. They had time. Cole rested a hand on her shoulder. He told her she was already a vital part of the team, their radar, guiding their moves and creating game-changing ambushes. Of course, that didn't mean she could stop training. Stella blushed, flustered but motivated. Cole sent her off to the training field. A 5-minute survival test awaited. A simple drill, but one that could spark the makings of a true hunter. Stella noticed Cole watching her and shot him a questioning look, wondering what he wanted from her this time. Not that she could hear his answer. Not in the chaos she was in right now. A swarm of venomous scorpions lunged at her, their tails slicing through the air. The Hunter Association's training center went way beyond your usual arena fights. It wasn't some basic gym setup either. This place had its own specialized combat zones. A dungeon built specifically for scout class training, fine-tuned to sharpen survival instincts and recon skills. There was no better place to awaken Stella's true potential. Cole wanted her grinding here all day until her limits shattered. Meanwhile, Scott had just lost his match, and his frustration hit hard when he realized both Cole and the coach had seen it. Cole told him not to stress. The kid had serious potential, maybe even the highest ceiling on the team. Scott's ability was strong, and his physical stats were way above average. His only weakness? He didn't know when to use his power. His timing was off, and his movements lacked finesse. Cole wanted him to study gameplay footage of pros with a similar fighting style. Like Ben, the tank with 4,813 points, a perfect example to learn from. To make sure Scott was improving, Cole demanded post-match analysis reports after every game. He wanted proof that Scott was actually thinking, not just fighting on instinct. Freddie, Sean, and even Derek had pretty solid ratings now. Derek, in particular, seemed eager to climb higher. He'd even asked Cole for a unique strategy just for him. Cole thought he could make use of his weapon glow effect, that shimmering aura that briefly enhanced his strikes. The challenge was figuring out how to make that effect consistently viable. At last, that persistent girl, Caitlin, seemed to have finally stopped following him. Why she'd been shadowing him at all remained a mystery. Still, she'd been in top form today. She'd managed to take down Ben. No easy feat considering his raw defense and close-range power. And on top of that, she'd crossed paths with Cole, a third-division player who once defeated Takumi. She'd followed him around hoping to see him fight again, maybe to test him or just satisfy her curiosity. But all he'd done was train his team non-stop. To her, it looked painfully dull. Honestly, Caitlin thought his team kinda sucked anyway. No reason for her to lose sleep over them. Once again, Cole and his crew showcased their signature grenadier strategy, the coordinated bomb rush tactic that had earned them several wins. Cole couldn't help but wonder if any team out there could actually counter it. After the match, Stella kept training while Cole silently observed, analyzing every movement. The team's win streak since the start of the season looked impressive. But he knew nothing lasted forever. Their next opponents were LTD, the first real powerhouse they'd be facing. Yusuf pulled Cole aside, saying they should start prepping specifically for this upcoming match. He didn't understand why Cole was still making Stella go through such grueling drills. What he didn't know was that Cole had tasked her with capturing a live monster or minion, hoping the experience would awaken her hidden ability. Of course, Cole couldn't exactly tell Yusuf that outright, so he simply said Stella needed to improve her survival skills. Better mobility meant better chances on the field. But even more crucial was understanding how enemies think during combat. Cole trained her to think like an attacker, to anticipate, to strike from unseen angles, to recognize the perfect ambush spot. He also drilled her on tactical eliminations, the art of removing a target with precision and timing. Apparently, Yusuf actually bought the explanation. Meanwhile, in the training field, one of the monsters tore through Stella's trap. In that moment of panic and pressure, her binding skill finally awakened. The girl dropped to the ground, stunned, not by exhaustion, but by the realization of what had just happened. Cole had been waiting for this. With Stella's breakthrough, their match against LTD was now looking very promising. Later, the managers of PER and LTD faced the press for pre-match interviews. Team PER had stormed through the season like a rising tempest. With their new cutting-edge strategy, the reporters asked Brandon, LTD's manager, if his team was ready to counter them. He confidently said they were. Some thought revealing that much was reckless. But deep down, Brandon doubted Team PR could pose a real threat anyway. He hinted that LTD would introduce a new player in their next match, a rare move for a team that almost never changed its lineup. Fans went wild with speculation, desperate to know who the mystery recruit was. The press conference wrapped up with a promise. The truth would be revealed on the battlefield. Cole started digging for info, trying to find out who LTD's new member could be. Unfortunately, he couldn't recall a single player from their previous roster, which made the mystery all the more intriguing. Derek walked up thinking Cole was watching another Rookies Fail compilation. Cole told him to quit joking around. LTD wasn't dumb enough to leak their ace card to the public. But Derek wasn't kidding. He pointed at the screen, face dead serious. Levi Stark. Cole didn't expect to see that name pop up this early. In his previous life, back when Cole was still part of LTD, Levi was the first recruit to join after his departure. His ability ranked at a terrifying S+, and when he went all out, he could single-handedly unravel an entire strategy. The match had already started. Cole ordered his squad to stick with the Grenadier strat. This time, they were to drop bombs the instant 3 or more enemies grouped together. The goal: wipe out as many as possible before the entire enemy team could regroup. Once their mana bombs ran out, Freddy and Sean were to fall back and join the main assault unit. Stella asked what she should do, and Cole told her to stay put and wait for her moment. When the team gathered, Stella reported enemy movement. LTD was clustering inside a southern arena building. She thought it'd be smarter to blow the place up, potentially wiping them all in one shot. But Cole had been clear: strike before they grouped, not after. Freddy immediately locked in coordinates, then launched his daggers, each one strapped with mana bombs. The projectiles hit their mark, taking out 2 LTD players before they could even reach their allies. The rest of LTD was holed up in that southern building. Cole's squad regrouped. Freddy warned that the enemies were tightly packed. A single mana bomber wouldn't cut it this time. It was time to play their trump card. Cole gave the order to drop the bombs, while the siege unit stormed in before the dust cleared. Deep down, Cole already knew what Levi could do, and how easily he could counter this entire setup, but he needed the team to see it happen with their own eyes. They had to learn that every strategy, no matter how powerful, came with a limit. Freddy released his daggers again, but this time, the bombs detonated mid-air, never touching the ground. Just as Cole predicted, Levi was here. Somewhere far away, Adam sat deep in thought. That piece ended the day the monsters broke through the barrier. The chairman had taken the boy in years ago. Back then, he dedicated his entire life to that goal, training harder than anyone. But before he was ready, the last monster-infested dungeon was cleared. With no more enemies left to destroy, his purpose vanished. And so did he, slipping into a deep depression before leaving Adam's side. The chairman never understood where Levi went, nor could he have guessed the boy would end up joining LTD. Of all people, he'd now be facing Cole, his former comrade. Back in the arena, Derek panicked at the explosion, but Cole calmed him down. He told them not to freak out over every little thing. Team PER held the advantage, sticking closely to Cole's plan. Cole signaled Sean and Freddie to regroup with him while Stella stayed on standby. The squad stormed the building where LTD's core unit had taken position. Cole didn't want this turning into a messy brawl, not yet. Freddie struck first, showing a level of tactical awareness rare for a 3rd Division squad. Levi immediately realized what was happening. Sean and Freddie were trying to box him in. Not good. Against that many opponents, even he couldn't hold them all off. He jumped between platforms using air step to evade the incoming barrage while Freddie kept firing relentlessly. Then Levi unleashed his skill, Pulse. The shockwave ripped through the room, knocking everyone off their feet. Equipment, debris, and even bodies crashed to the floor. Levi gave a cold grin. Team PER wasn't half bad, but they were nowhere near ready for him. But compared to Adam, they were nothing. The outcome had been written long before the match began. After all, the Grenadier strategy was the only card they had to play. Meanwhile, Derek went full berserker mode, charging one of the enemies head-on. But while he was focused on that poor target, another opponent flanked him and locked him down in a flash. That was it for Derek. One clean sword strike, and he was out of the match. Levi thought this fight would be easy. What he didn't realize was that Cole had set the stage from the very start. Those platforms scattered across the map weren't random. Every placement, every angle, every firing line, Cole had planned it all for maximum accuracy. Levi ducked behind a crumbled wall, gritting his teeth. Cole's aim was sharp, maybe even sharper than his own. The swordsman lunged, trying to knock the gun from Cole's hands, but his attempt shattered against pure precision. And just like that, 4 became 3. Sean was still standing, thankfully. He thanked Cole for buying him that crucial moment to recover. 2 enemies were left outside. Cole ordered Freddie and Sean to handle them. He himself would take on Levi, 1-on-1. It was time to end this. The commentator's voice echoed through the arena, calling Cole's charge into enemy territory suicidal. But what followed proved the opposite. Cole had already made waves in scrims, practice games, and official matches, but never before had he showcased this level of domination in a direct duel. The crowd roared. His movements were clean, ruthless, and precise, textbook pro level. Still, Levi wasn't one to be underestimated. Between these two, it was impossible to tell who was truly stronger. Cole might have already taken down 2 LTD members, but in a duel of aces, that meant nothing. Levi's pulse could crush him the moment he predicted a movement wrong. This was Cole, 3-time champion of the International Hunter League, 3-time preseason victor, 8 MVP awards, 4 All-Star titles, 2 smaller tournament wins. All those trophies were Cole's legacy, his pride, his proof. When it came to understanding the game, Cole believed no one could outthink him. The duel burned hotter. Levi admitted, if only to himself, that Cole was damn good. But could he survive Pulse? The ground trembled. Mana shields flickered and cracked. Cole's couldn't take much more. If that was the case, he'd just have to take Levi down first. The countless hours of training with Adam were paying off now. Cole gathered mana between dodges, sliding across debris and fire. Levi's intent was clear. He wanted to knock Cole out of the sky. Cole gave Stella the signal. She knew what that meant. Get ready. The moment he stopped to cast, Stella's mana thread lashed out, locking his arm mid-motion. Levi hadn't gathered enough mana, and now he was trapped. If Cole let this one slip, his name as the legendary sniper would mean nothing. That was his last thought before pulling the trigger. One perfect shot sealing the fight. Levi fell. The scoreboard lit up. Team PR had claimed victory. Adam was stunned. He had no idea Stella possessed that kind of ability. Cole, as always, knew exactly how to lead his team to glory. Elsewhere, the chairman received a late-night call. The man on the line asked if he'd seen the match. Of course he had. Cole had always been a thorn in his side. The caller agreed. Cole was better than Levi. Then came an odd request. The man asked Adam to bring Cole by sometime. His daughter had loved watching the match. Strange. Elisa had never cared about the lower divisions before. What had caught her attention this time? In the locker room, Freddie was furiously typing up a post about Cole's heroic takedown of LTD. Cole smacked him lightly on the head, asking what the hell he was doing. Freddie's silence said it all. He'd probably resume typing the second Cole looked away. Cole was announced as the MVP of the match and told to prep for the post-game interview. The host called the battle phenomenal and asked if Cole had expected this victory. The answer was obvious. Of course he did. People seemed to forget what he'd said at the start of the season. Back then, he'd claimed that no team would stand against them, and that even the top-ranked squads would regret facing PER. The host chuckled, remembering how that press conference had caused a stir across the league. Then came the replay, the best moment of the match, chosen by the audience. The scene of Levi's bind and Cole's finishing shot had gone viral. The interviewer asked what Cole had been thinking in that moment and whether he'd planned the duel from the start. Should he tell the truth? Or maybe spice it up a bit? A little teasing would make things more fun. Levi was no doubt fuming right now. In his past life, every victory like this had come with tension. So Cole simply said he'd been ready for any duel. Nothing about it had surprised him. Then he accidentally messed up the name, saying the enemy team's ace, Larry, was it, had played okay. The host panicked and quickly corrected him in a whisper. Levi. His name was Levi. Right. Levi. Cole called him mediocre, said he fell straight into a trap anyone should have seen coming. Not really Levi's fault. Cole was just that good. The guy was probably losing his mind backstage. But that was the beauty of it. That's how a real post-match interview was supposed to go.